The tale continues, where rivers run swift and shadows deepen. Isabella, the last dragon shifter, carries her kin through peril and reveals new forms of her ancient power. In Lake Town, beneath lantern light and whispers of fear, she finds love's courage beside Fíli, and their union is blessed by powers greater than kings. Yet the shadow of the dragon smog stretches over mountain and water alike. With Kíli's life waning, Thorin's heart hardening, and Bard burdened by destiny, Isabella must walk a path where love and duty entwine. This is the story of a dragon's heart, of vows whispered by firelight, and of a looming flame that threatens to consume them all. Bella thought it was both exhilarating and unnerving being in the water. Exhilarating due to the rapids guiding her quickly, the way she could breathe and exhale air, even though she's underwater. It was a rush. What was unnerving? Because though she was what would be classed as a fish, her flame burned hot, and she felt smothered. It also didn't help that her dress was floating around her, but thankfully, it didn't rip, because her pack and none of the others got returned. She made sure the company were safe, that they didn't wedge on rocks, or that Bilbo didn't slip into the water for long. She knew hobbits did not swim. It didn't help that she could taste Kíli's blood in the water. "Where is Isa?" Fíli yelled, as he glanced around frantically, all the while avoiding being struck. "She dove into the water." Good Lucuin yelled back to the prince as he lashed out with the borrowed axe, only to curse as a flicker of a beast jumped from the water over him and tore into the orc that had jumped from the shore and disappeared back into the rapids. Mahal bless, the elves on the side paused as they watched what had emerged from the water as they pursue the escaping dwarves and the orcs chasing them. They had not seen such a creature in their waters before. They had never even seen a creature in their book learnings either, and many wondered what exactly it was. The only ones who knew beside the company was Legolas and Tauriel, the prince nearly jerking with surprise as he jumped from barrel to barrel, only to completely miss one due to a sharp current pull, and nearly plunged into the water, only to be tossed up by a strong force, his eyes snapping down in a flash to see black hair, ashen skin, and golden tail as the dragon disappeared under the water. He would have to thank her later. Bella tore through the bodies with malicious glee, using both claws and teeth as they fell into the water, whether it be by dwarf, elf, or simply because they fell. She would take out her anger upon them while protecting the ones she has claimed as kin. Her body weaved in and out of the rocks, barrels, and other bits as she swished through the current, making sure the barrels would not be stopped in any way, only for her eyes to snap up as she picked up the sound of Bomber's name being called. "Bomber," Dwalin called, throwing the axe to the heavy dwarf behind him. Bomber quickly catches the axe just as his barrel connects with a dead orc's spear, the wood groaning before catapulting it and him through the air and onto the riverbank. He heard bones breaking as he landed on a group of orcs, his nose scrunching at the smell before the barrel flipped and landed on another set. A groan escaped his lips, and he thanked Mahal he finally came to a stop before realizing he was surrounded, his barrel crumbling around him. With a wicked grin, he smashed out his arms, a spear and axe in one hand before spinning, his weapons slicing into the flesh of the orcs as his barrel crumpled. He, though not small by any means, could still fight, and fight he did before jumping back into an awaiting barrel. Legolas continued to make sure the dwarves were untouched by the orcs, his main focus on the gold-haired one that he knew to be the shifter's mate. It would not do anyone any good if he were to get hurt. He has seen the wrath of a dragon, and he did not wish to see another in his home. He pushed forward ahead of the hunting party, using the dwarves as stepping stones from one side of the other before coming to a stop and killing off the two on the slight cliff face, jerking when he felt a blade fly past him and into the orc that was about to strike out. His eyes snapped to the king, and Legolas begrudging admitted he owed the exiled king for saving his life. Though he did not have the same views as his father, he did not care much for the king and his rudeness. But then again, The dragon had caused his kin more harm than the dwarf, but at least that he understood. "Tauriel, wait! This one we keep alive," he ordered as he spun around in surprise to see his captain force the last orc near them to its knees. Legolas turns back and stares after the dwarves for a second before turning back towards the woodland realm. Tauriel watches the dwarves floating away, being chased by orcs. "Should we follow them?" she asked as softly to her prince, while handing off the orc filth to one of the others, her eyes catching a glimpse of the dragon before she disappeared into the white rapids once more. "We will once we question this, but we must not delay. All will be well until we find out why this filth was in our home," Legolas ordered before pushing back towards his home, where he knew his father would be beyond angry. He would have to lie through his teeth to make his father believe that he and Tauriel were not part of this. The rapids tapered off a little ways down the stream, causing the Dwaro to thank their maker as they hit the soft current. Bella stayed a ways back from the others, but let her mate see her as she pushed his and Kíli's barrels towards the edge, smiling up at his awed face. She still couldn't understand why he saw her in such a light when she shifted, though it gave her hope for when her time to slay Smaug came. "Anything behind us?" Thorin called out as he used a stick to pull himself to shore. "I think we've outrun the orcs," Bofur yelled in relief. "Not for long. We've lost the current," Thorin replied as he helped the others. "Make for the shore. Come on, let's go." Everyone quickly gathered onto the shore, many of them groaning as they gripped the blessed rocks and willed the nausea away. Bilbo gasped and retched over behind one of the larger outcroppings as he tried to will the vertigo away. Hobbits were not made for water, though near everything stilled when Kíli stumbled and gasped out in pain, drawing. Fíli saw Bella's and Bofur's eyes in the meantime, two sets of eyes locking onto the gaping wound as he tossed away the arrow. "I'm fine, it's nothing," Thorin growled. "On your feet, we keep moving." "Kíli's wounded, his leg needs binding," Bofur stated, worried as he stared at Thorin while Fíli moved to help his brother bind his leg. "It's fine," Kíli hissed as his brother pressed down on the wound. "Bind his leg, quickly." "You have 2 minutes," Thorin ordered, worry churning in his chest, eyes scanning up the river for the orcs. He caught the sight of something dark and gold in the still water and had to blink as his eyes finally took in the sight of Isabella just beneath the surface. Her image was distorted, but he wondered why she did not come to shore just yet. In fact, Bella was wondering the same thing. Why hadn't she returned to the shore yet? The sensation of being underwater, though oddly calming, was near stifling as the water around her turned warm due to the flame in her chest. 3 fish sailed from the water and landed near Bomber's feet as she tossed them out. When they came within reach, curious fish, though her amusement left when she caught sight of a figure upon the rocks just above her kin with an arrow. Ori squeaked as he turned his eyes upwards when he felt something watching him. At the sound, the company jump up, and Dwalin, holding a branch, leaps in front of Ori. He raises the branch and begins to charge the man. But the man shoots his arrow, and it embeds itself right in the middle of the branch, between Dwalin's hands. Kíli raises a rock to throw, but the man shoots the rock out of his hand too. "Do it again, and you're dead," Bard warns as he eyes the dark-haired dwarf, and raised another arrow to the blonde one next to him, who held the dagger in his hand. A low cut of laughter filled the tense silence, drawing eyes to Thorin. "What is so funny? I would not point an arrow at them if I were you. She does not like it when you threaten her one," he replied with a slight twitch of a smile. Bard frowned and drew the string back at the thread, his eyes scanning the company before him, and saw no female. "I do not see," he trailed off as a body rose from the water, eyes flashing with swirling colors and jagged teeth. Do not shoot at my kin. Human, or you will not like the consequences. Bella hissed before lowering herself back into the water so her gills were submerged. Enough. Balin shifted and raised his hands in a placating manner as he eyed the company, Isabella, and the man. Excuse me, but, you're from Laketown, if I'm not mistaken. That barge over there, it wouldn't be available for hire by any chance? They could see the distrust in the human as he lowered his bow reluctantly. He did not answer them as he made his way back towards his barge to collect the barrels that rested in the catching bay the elves had made long ago. He did not know how they always ended up in the same spot, but he was thankful for it. "What makes you think I will help you?" he asked as he began to lift the barrels from the water, all the while making sure the dwarves didn't grow any closer and still keeping an eye on the woman who glared at him. "Those boots have seen better days," Balin started. "As has that coat. No doubt you have some hungry mouths to feed. How many bairns?" Bard paused and stared at the dwarf in surprise. "A boy and 2 girls. And your wife?" "I'd imagine she's a beauty," Balin asked, trying to flatter the bargeman only to cringe as he saw the pain flash in the human's eyes. "Aye, she was. Enough with the niceties. We need to keep moving," Dwalin growled out as he pushed himself up from the rock, his eyes flashing to the water and then to Fíli. Fíli ignored his kin as he moved closer to the water at the edge of the stone platform and knelt down, his eyes scanning his mate's neck and face for the damage, completely ignoring the odd gills. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "I am better now. The water is soothing and I heal quick," she whispers, pushing herself up on the rock platform and bumped her head with her mates to comfort him. "I feel better. I am no longer in chains." "Chains?" Bard asked, startled, as he caught the tail end of the creature's words. A few of the dwarves bristled, but it was the one who began to speak to him that explained. "We were trying to pass through Mirkwood, but the elves captured us. One shot at him, and Lady Isabella didn't take too well of her, one being threatened and attacked. Because of the king thought I was a monster and demanded me to tell him what I was. When I refused, he had me chained by the devices that the orcs used on the skin changers, with spikes in the shackles resting against the skin. He tried to break me," Bella explained in a feral hiss. Bard felt nauseous at the woman's words. "I will take you, but payment will be needed." As the company began to murmur and gather onto the boat, asking Bard if they could be supplied with clothes and weapons as well. Once they reached the town, as Thorin only managed to grab 3 packs when Bilbo got the blades, Fíli and Bella were still conversing. Bella, of course, kept the tail and just shifted away the gills as she leant against her one and allowed his heart to soothe her. "I tried to make sure you would not be hurt," she whispered. "I should have listened. Into you, Cajamel. Because of me, you were shackled." He whispers into her hair, letting the tear escape into it. "Men Lananubux me. It is not your fault, Fíli. They would have done it either way. I will gladly be chained if it meant you were safe," she explained firmly. "Su'u lokal hai, his kulanzos we pa, Yuvon ko arda. I love you, sweet prince, more than all gold." In Arda, Fíli smiled at the words, remembering when she had first told him that, and yet now he knew the full meaning and impact of them. Though Bella knew her mate understood the phrase, he would not know the whole truth till it was time, and then hopefully he would understand. Laketown was something that made Bella's skin crawl as she peered up at the rotting timber, and even underwater she could smell the filth. She could taste it. If the water was this bad, she did not want to know what the air above tasted like. She swam along to the sound of her mate's heartbeat to keep track of it, and soon enough she was face to face with Dwalin under the water. his eyes wide as he took her in. Mahal bless, Dwalin thought, as he took in the golden tail that seemed to swish around her, the dress floating around it. His eyes snapped to Isabella before him and widened as he took in the jagged, toothy smile. And was she laughing at him? Now, Dwalin, and you can't breathe underwater, she teased once she helped him up to the surface under a home, grinning at his gasping breaths. The others stared and then ducked under the water when Dwalin began to splutter the word, tail golden. What? Why did you shift into lass? You be some kind of fish. Good Lucoin whispered loudly as he earned a smack from Oin when he began to look like he was about to yell. This is what people in the other place called a mermaid. It is a creature of myth, each one different from the others. It was this form I liked the most when it came to mind. Now why are you all in the water? She asked, and then suddenly the smell invaded her senses, causing her to gag. If the taint was bad under the water, it was surely worse above it. But now it was acquainted with the stench of dragon. Not her clan. No, she to others would smell like fire and earth, a forge burning with timber and not coals. She was natural, formed from the valor of all things green and growing. No, this dragon smelt like death, brimstone and darkness. What is it, Isabella? She heard Nori ask while she felt her mate and Kíli by her side as she slipped into the water. The dragon still lives. She gasped out. His stench floats down from the mountain, she warbled before shaking her head. We need to move. Bard is expecting us, and then we can get into some warm clothes. Hurry, Thorin grunted, concerned, but for now, it was not the time to dawdle. Soon enough, they were near where they were told to go, scrunching up their noses at the fact that they had to come up into the bargeman's latrine. None were too happy about it, but Bella couldn't help but giggle as she listened to them moan and whine about it. Seriously, we're swimming in the water, you do know this? She remarked softly, causing the dwarves above to still and curse at her. Tilda, Sigrid, I need you to gather a dress and go down to get. Bard began to explain, trailing off as he realized he didn't know the lady's name. Isabella. Her name is Isabella. The golden-haired one who he suspected was her betrothed, explained. Sigrid turned onto her father with a scowl, much like the one her mother gave. You let a lady crawl up through the latrine, father? Well, no. Can she come up, or does she need to stay in the water? Bard asked the dwarves, unsure. Bella huffed and pulled herself up with a grunt as the tail began to shift back into legs. She moaned in pain as the bones shifted and merged and swore to never shift into it again. Bella learned that fish bones were a little different to shift to and fro her normal form, splitting and groaning. For once a shift was painful, and don't even start on the scales. A water dragon was more fitting now. At least he had shifted into that before. Sigrid and Fíli rushed down the stairs as they heard the pain, the latter going right for his one, while the girl gaped and stared with wide eyes as she watched the golden scaled tail disappear. Bella looked up in surprise to see a dark-haired child holding tightly to a bundle of fabric. Hello, she greets, smiling softly as the girl blinked and continued to stare. I am Isabella. What are you? The girl blurts before blushing a brilliant red in mortification. Fíli smiled as his. One laughed freely once she stood. I am a shifter, little miss. Now who may you be? Sigrid gasped softly as she craned her neck up to the woman before frowning and looking down at the dress in her arms. It was her mother's, but the lady before her was larger than her Da. I'm Sigrid. Da told me to bring you a dress, but I don't know if it'll fit. It will, little one. Do not fret. Bella tried to soothe, shrinking her size down to an appropriate human size while holding of the grimace as the wet dress clung to her frame. Fíli watched with a warm smile as his mate comforted the girl before him, still a child by human standards, and once again he wished for the future. He fingered the bead that rested blank behind his ear. The bead one was to engrave an offer on their wedding day, many patterns coming to mind for it. Fíli knew that one day he would marry her, for that he was certain. Everyone was in a merry state. They had just spoken to the master of Lake Town and had gained a place to settle for the night before making their way to Erebor. Though they were merry, they could see Isabella was tense and kept rubbing at her throat when they weren't looking. They had seen the manacles attached to her when the elf prince and his chosen had helped her escape with them. They had seen the blood for a split second upon her skin before she dived into the lake after them. They also knew that Kíli's leg was getting worse, no matter how much the poor lad tried to hide it. "Do you know how to play lass?" Dwalin asked, holding up his fiddle in question. He, like everyone else, had tried to snap her out of it, and usually music helped. Fíli turned to look at his one with a hopeful glance from his brother's side. He was torn between the two, and the night they got to rest in the master's home, she told him to worry for Kíli. "The violin?" "Yes," she replied softly from her spot by the fire. "Why? Would you play us a tune, lass? Something from your culture, or maybe anything that we have not heard before? Surely you must know plenty of old songs." Everyone was staring at Dwalin now, cause of his statement, and he knew it, but decided to keep his eyes locked on Isabella's. "You want me to play?" she asked, blinking, her brows raised high. It had been a long time since she felt the desire to play the violin, or fiddle, really. "Would you? I'd like to hear you play." Fíli piped up, causing her eyes to shift to him. "You can borrow my fiddle. It's strapped to my pack next to you." Bella chuckled softly and picked up her mate's violin and held it in her grasp. "It has been a long time since I have played. It was my brother's instrument I learnt for him," she confessed before standing and resting it upon her shoulder, trying to figure out what to play. The others watched as she closed her eyes and seemed to sway, the fire lighting up behind her, casting a golden glow around her as she began to play the tune. Though the second she laid the bow upon the strings, Bella felt herself being jerked into a memory. She was no longer in a mildew-scented shack above a lake, with the scent of darkness and dragon's wrath in the air, but in the soft fields of her home, her brother laughing as both she and he stood across the fire, ready to duel. Their village was around them. They always came to see her and Darelth play. "You'll not win this time, sister," he taunted as he raised his fiddle. She felt her lips twitch into a smile, more of a sharp grin. "We will see, brother. Now, my dear ones, play." Yavanna's voice laughs out as she leans back into her spot in the tree branches. They began to play, their fiddles matching note for note. "Dovakin, Dovakinal, oke sin los varinwa den vokul mafarera gastval, arkfin, norok pal, granfod nust honzindro, zandovakin, fahin kogan mudral." "That is cheating. You are not allowed to sing," she yells to her brother, who simply laughs and continues on. When the last note struck, Kisenth snapped her eyes open and stiffened. The company was around her, watching her in awe, and as she looked, she could see that she had moved. She had mimicked each step that her and Darelth did in her memory, and it brought a pang to her heart. I sung, didn't I?" she asked, worried once she took in the glazed eyes. "I apologize." What was that?" Thorin asked, blinking several times from his spot by the door with Bilbo. "I have never heard or seen such music or dance." The song is what me and my brother dueled to. The song he always sung to win. It's a song of my people, she explained with a sigh, lowering the violin. I was lost in the memory. I did not think I would sing the song with it, as it was his trick. But Kisenth knew better. She could feel her brother's laughter echo in the back of her mind, even now. His heart beat a second faster than normal before settling back to being in rhythm. The bastard. Why have you not sung before? Joined us? Bomber asked. Even he had joined in, and he was the quietest of the group. Bella sighed. My voice can hypnotize. When I sing, it happens as well. It is why I wore the mask in Rivendell. It is why I do not sing, because it makes people unsettled. Can you sing for us? We won't be. We promise. Kíli piped up once he saw his brother's hopeful face below his mask. No. Sorry, Kíli. Bella replied instantly with a shake of her head. Please? Fíli whispered, causing Bella to groan. Her eyes shifted to her mate in a small glare. I can't say no to you. You use this against me. She chuckled before sighing. Fine, but if you feel funny, don't get all pissed at me. I warned you. With a deep breath, she closed her eyes once more and raised the violin to her chin once again. She let the tune play softly, as much as she could, before she began to sway. The others watched entranced as Isabella seemed to relax and glow at the same time. A serpent lights the ancient sky, a threat of tainted stars, evil stirs, and in its wake, the souls of mortals. Sway sorrow reigns over fields of red spirits, pace through the shadows, cast by their graves. These are days and nights of venom, and blood heroes will rise as the anchors fall brave the strife, reclaim every soul that belongs to the beauty of dawn. Darkness strikes to blind the strong, but faith will guide our swords' loyal hearts. We'll stand as one and fight with shields of hope. Pride fuels the deadly fire that devours our tower of gold. The drums of war will rage and roar till the sun burns bright once more. These are days and nights of venom, and blood heroes will rise as the anchors fall, brave the strife, reclaim every soul that belongs to the beauty of dawn. As the last note fell, Kisenth stilled, her eyes still closed, as the echoing voice of Apophis, Fafnir, and Leith finished their hum in her memory. The song was a favorite of many of her clan. It seemed to cause the emotions to swirl within you. That was beautiful, lass. Balin managed to get out after clearing his throat. Her shoulders were tense as she stared deeply into the fire, her arms dropping to her sides once more. She felt cold, desolate by the memories. They brought no joy as they once had, only aches and screams, the scent of death. Do not ask me to sing or play again, she gritted out, turning her back to them and towards the fire, allowing 2 tears to spill over and evaporate before they reached her lips, and placed the fiddle down on the chair before striding from the room. The second the door was closed, she slid to the floor and buried her face into her hands and cried for all those who had died protecting the free people, for those who were killed by those twisted serpents and who had inevitably succumbed to the darkness. But most of all, she cried for her brother, and she cried for herself. Fíli felt his heart constrict as he followed her, his hand resting upon the door, and felt the vibrations as his. One cried, they shouldn't have asked her. He recalls memories that are too painful to bear. He had a few of his dad that made his heart ache, but his one would have hundreds of those who she has lost, those she can never see again. Asjungel? He called softly, pressing his forehead against the door and closing his eyes. The sobs stuttered, but did not stop. I am sorry, Asjungel, for asking you to play. I did not mean for you to remember hard times. Bella clenched her eyes shut and scrubbed her face with her palm as she listened to her mate talk to her his voice rough as he apologized. "It is not your fault." She chokes out. "Can I come in, Asjungel?" he asked softly, pressing his palm against the door, and waited. He would not push her to open the door, nor would he be upset if she didn't. He understood that she may need space, and though he doesn't want to leave her alone to cry, he will if that's what she wished. "Okay," she croaked out, while pulling herself up from the floor. Bella quickly gave her face a wipe with the sleeve of her dress before opening the door for her mate, falling into his arms the second he looked up at her. Fíli caught her and carefully picked her up, and shutting the door with his foot, and made his way to the bed, crawling in beside her, all the while not letting her go. It was hard to manage, but he was able to do it. And now his one was curled around him with her head resting upon his chest, her ear above his heart, his fingers running through her hair. "I miss them," she whispered softly after a long period of silence. "I miss my brother's smile and my sister's laughter. I miss the way my clan would always be singing. It never stopped, and then there was no one. Darkness took my family, my kin from me, and I watched my mother weep as her creations one by one fell. 40 of us remained after War of the Wrath, 40 from 1,000. She trailed off brokenly. Flashes of all her kin, sun rays flickered across her memory, and then came the death. 40. We were so broken. We scattered across Arda. Then one by one we all fell, till it was only I. I don't know why, out of all of us, it was me who survived. I was one of the original maid, along with my brother. Apophis was born from the originals. She was still a youngling when her and Darrelth mated and decided to have babes. Why is it I that survived when they had more to live for? She asked, and Fíli felt his heart break. I do not know, Amralame, but I am glad that you did. I know it may seem heartless, but if you had passed before my time, I would never have found you, he whispered, his hand stilling at the base of her neck, fingers tangled in her hair. I would never know the feeling of love, never dream of you becoming my wife. It is hard to remember my life when you were not in it. Now I cannot dream of a life without you. Bella let out one more sob before looking up into her mate's eyes. I too have dreamt of our future. I hope one day that it will be true. That is, if the dragon does not kill me. Fíli jerked, and for once, moved her away from him, a scowl upon his face. Do not speak of it so flippantly. Your death would kill me. Your pain would pain me too, and Kíli. I am sorry, my love. I do not mean to upset you. It's just, I am unsure if I can kill Smaug. I don't know if I will be strong enough anymore. She explains, giving a half-truth. She knows she is strong enough, but her scales are no longer protected. Her armor resided in Minas Tirith, or Yavanna knows where. She would be exposed to the beast's talons and jaws. I do not know after we face the dragon's wrath if our dreams would be able to happen. That is all. Then marry me tonight. Fíli blurted out before he could stop himself, his hand covering his mouth with shock. Bella had snapped her head around to face him with wide eyes. You do not know what you ask, she hissed, her heart beating rapidly while her siblings stayed the same. She tried to ignore their voices as she pushed herself up and away from her mate to the balcony. As much as Bella wished to marry him, she could not do so with the lies that she has said. With the truth still hidden, and he unknowing of her true form, Fíli jumped to his feet and followed her, pulling the carved bead from his hair that he had done last night with Nori's borrowed lockpicks. Yes, I do know what I ask for, Isabella. No, you do not. You do not even know my name, she wheezed out, her eyes wide as she tried to flee but couldn't. She couldn't push away her mate, no matter how much she tried. Then tell me, my love. Marry me tonight. "Be it my way or your own," he whispered, stopping at the door as his one stopped at the railing of the terrace, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "I just want us to be one, cleaved together by our makers before. I just don't want to die knowing I had not asked you, because if I were to find myself upon my deathbed, I will not have regrets." Kisenth watched as her mate closed his eyes. His hand, the one carrying the wedding bead, fell to his side. She watched as a tear trailed down his cheek. Just one, and her resolve began to crumble. She could be selfish just this once. A long, slow whistle escaped past her lips, and she turned to catch the thrush that flew over to her. "Send for your woodland master, little one. There shall be a wedding, and I need him to preside. Tell him it is Kisenth that calls him," she whispered to the little bird, giving it a pat before letting it flit off towards Mirkwood. "My name is Kisenth," she explained softly, turning her eyes back to Fíli, who was staring at her with such hope, such raw emotion, that she felt her heart flutter and her body warm. "Only you may call me that, but never with the others. Do not tell the others, my love." "Kisenth," he repeated, earning a laugh as his tongue fumbled the odd name. "You may call me Anth," she chuckled. "It is what Estelle, Gilran, and a few others call me. It is like Isa. So you will marry me?" "And?" Fíli asked, hopeful, smiling as his one burst out into joyful laughter and swept him up in her arms. "Of course! But we will do the dwarven way when the mountain is reclaimed, something to look forward to. So we shall to it my clan's way." She laughed out, smiling down and placing a kiss upon his lips. "Then we must tell the others," Fíli yelled after the kiss and pulled her from the room, laughing. Bella followed her mate willingly as he called for the others down into the sitting room of the blasted house. Bella had never dreamt of this. Well, she always dreamt that she would marry one day, but she always pictured it, surrounded by fire and trees in the fields of her home. But now she didn't care. As long as her mate was by her side, she could even marry him in Mordor, if that is what he wished. "The lad finally ask you then?" Nori asked as he stopped by her side at the door and watched as the company began to fuss and go into near-wedding panic. She chuckled and looked down at her friend. "Yes, and in such a most inappropriate time too. But if he didn't, that wouldn't be my Fíli. Shazara." Thorin's yell for silence roared over the others, silencing the company instantly. Is it not Isabella who should be telling us what to do, as Fíli said that they are to be wed her way? All eyes snapped to Isabella, who leant against the door frame with a soft smile, while Nori tried to hide his snickers. Each one had a blush as they realized they were trying to put together a wedding for a dwarven one, on top of arguing that it was too soon and not enough time to plan. "Bilbo, I need a flower crown," Bella stated softly, turning her eyes upon the resident hobbit, who seemed to brighten at the words and dashed out from the room. "I need the fire roaring as hot as you can get it. We will wed in front of it. Fíli, your hair needs to be unbound with mine," she explained softly. "We will tie it together as we pledge our love, much like your own." "Kíli, come help us," Thorin ordered with a nod towards Isabella. He was wary about the wedding in general, but so far, this was something he could do. The only time a dwarf had their hair unbound was when they were in private with their one oar fixing their braids. Balin moved to where the shifter stood. "Lass, who is going to perform the ceremony?" "Well, I sent word for Radagast. He, as Yavanna's Maya, since my lady cannot be here to do it as she had done for my kin. He must," Bella explained, shocking the others once again. "Dori, Nori, Ori, Can you unbraid my hair? I trust you three to do so, as you have cleaned it many of times on this quest." The three Ree brothers blinked at her before bustling into action and basically forcing her to sit while they unbraided the hair and gave Fíli his, a bead to carry, so he can rebraid it for their wedding ceremony with the wedding one, and began to brush it. Bella would have loved to soak in a bath for a little, but this will have to do. Soon Bilbo was back with 2 thin crowns made of red camellia, blue forget-me-nots, deep red carnations, and orange blossom. This was the best I could do. I had to liberate a few from people. Well, if you didn't break us out from Greenwood, you'd be classed as a burglar now. Can one of you bind gems in our crowns if able?" She giggled before blinking as a sudden sense of power rippled in the air. Her brows furrowed as she stood and moved towards the door, swinging it open and freezing in shock. There before her, in leathers and golden armor, arrows and horns strapped to his belt, was a face she had not expected to see for a long time. His dirty blonde, near brown hair was damp and hung loosely to his shoulders and down his back. The others paused and saw the man standing in the door, raised their weapons, only to earn a bark of laughter from the man. "Are you going to let me in, or do I need to return to my woods? I came all this way to see you defrawn." "My kin?" the man asked, his voice a nice baritone that seemed to rattle in their chests. "Daybell fa Iwendel. I summoned for Iwendel." She blurted out in shock as she stood aside for the man to enter, watching hesitantly as he removed his bow and arrows and hung them on the hook at the door. "No, you called for the woodland master, but it matters not. My kin for Iwendel is not in the woods," he explained before scanning the room with raised brows and locked his eyes on the golden-haired dwarf with his hair unbound. "Plus, without him I am the next best person. My wife would have come in her sister's stead if she was able, but she was summoned away, and she was not pleased you shot at her stag." Thorin cringed as the man's eyes locked onto him with distaste. He didn't know who the man was. They had thought him to be an elf with the way his armor was and the style of his bow and arrows, but his ears were rounded even if he moved like one. "But you what?" Bella stammered out, and it was the first time where they saw her stammer this badly, or even find words. The man sighed and grasped Isabella, causing the company to stiffen. "Let me do this for my kin. You are the last, and she cannot be here for you. It pains her and him, so they cannot come for this. So Enth, let me bind you, and you can owe me." He chuckled. Bella spluttered. "Owe you? I made sure the idiot didn't shoot the stag. I owe you nothing." She seethed, only to huff when all he did was laugh at her. "Isabella, do we need to escort him out?" Dwalin asked roughly, his hand clenched tightly on one of Fíli's swords. "No, Dwalin. Orome is just being the pain he usually island." Bella gritted out before sighing. "Fine, but I will be telling Vanna if you muck it up. My, what crude way you speak, kin. The other place you left too has made you more uncultured." Orome chuckled before moving to stand in front of the fire while smiling slightly at the dumbfounded looks of the dwarves. "This is why I prefer the elves. Do not even joke about that. Thranduil had me chained by orc creations, bound in dark magic in his cells. I could not shift without risking Fíli to the elves' wrath. They knew he was my mate and used it against me." She snapped to him, watching as his face went from serene teasing to thunderous. "Did he know what you are? Who you are?" he asked, causing her to shake her head sharply. "I will deal with him in time then. Come, it is time." "Ready, my love?" Bella asked softly, her face losing the harshness as she looked upon her one. She let her body shrink to his height as he moved to her side and stood before Orome, both of them letting Bilbo place the flower crowns upon their brow. "I Orome of the Valar, husband of Yavanna, Sister of Yavanna, stand before Kisenth and Fíli to bind in my kin's stead. Oroma started with a deep, booming voice. Before me you stand unbound, with flowers of Lady Yavanna and gems of Lord Allah upon your brow, and stand before the burning flame. Please join hands with your betrothed, and listen to that which I am about to say. Above you are the stars, below you are the stones, as time doth pass. Remember, like a stone should your love be firm, like a star should your love be constant. Let the powers of the mind and of the intellect guide you in your marriage. Let the strength of your wills bind you together. Let the power of love and desire make you happy, and the strength of your dedication make you inseparable. Be close, but not too close. Possess one another, yet be understanding. Have patience with one another, for storms will come, but they will pass quickly. Orome uttered to them, placing his hands upon both of theirs, one above and one below. Are you willing to bind yourself to Kisenth, to stand by her side steadfast and eternally? He asked, casting a look towards the blonde dwarf. Fíli nodded in surety. I do. And are you willing to bind yourself to Fíli, to stand by his side faithfully and eternally? The Lord of Forests asked the dragon. I do, she replied instantly, causing both men to smile, as witnessed of all before them, hear their oaths to one another and bind one another together. Orome removed his hands and gestured for Fíli to go first, who swallowed thickly. He had not prepared vows to pledge, as it was a sudden. He clenched his eyes shut, snapping them open when his one squeezed his hand in comfort. He smiled softly as she cast him an encouraging smile, so he let the words come to him. I, Fíli, son of Fíli and Dis, daughter of Thrain, hereby pledge my eternal love to you, and my heart from this day forth. I swear to honor you, protect you, and keep you warm upon the coldest of nights. I will stand by your side, no matter what challenges come at us, for you are my one, my chosen. I promise to listen to your word when you give it, to value you more than gems and gold, for you are my Mizamelu. Nothing will compare to you. He managed to get out thickly as he braided his one's hair with the marriage bead. Orome gestured towards Kisenth with a furrowed brow and worry in his chest. There was no mention of her status, of her kind in the vows. I, Enth, daughter of Yavanna, by the life that courses within my blood, and the love that resides within my heart, take thee, Fíli, son of Fíli, to my hand, my heart, and my spirit, to be my chosen one, to desire thee and be desired by thee, to possess thee and be possessed by thee, without sin or shame, for naught can exist in the purity of my love for thee. I promise to love thee wholly and completely without restraint, in sickness and in health, in plenty and in poverty, in life and beyond, where we shall meet, remember, and love again. I shall not seek to change thee in any way. Kisenth swore, in the vows that many others before her spoke to their mate. It was the vows her brother gave to his mate, and so on. I promise, I will love you more than gems and gold, for your love is all I will ever need. She finished before braiding in the dragon's tail braid, and clasped it with the bead she had originally made him, along with one of the others. She would need to replace it when all is said and done, when he knew the truth. As witnessed before the burning flame, you are now Wednesday. Orome finished softly, his mouth set into a tight smile, his eyes soft. May Yavanna and Allah watch over you, and this quest end in happiness. Everyone was in a celebratory mood, and congratulating Fíli while Bella had escorted Orome to the door. Thank you, Orome. You did not need to come. She spoke, causing the Valar before her to shake his head. You are the last of your clan, Kisenth. This is what I could do for my sisters and my wife. Nessa could not come. She was furious at the dwarf shooting at her stag, and Yavanna too. We may have our differences, my kin, but I need to go. I will deal with the elves come time, but I am being called back, Aromi informed, placing his hand upon the dragon's cheek and smiling wide. May the fire burn bright and keep you warm. He farewelled softly. I wish you all the luck on this journey, and may the stars keep you company, Kisenth replied with a cheeky smile. Farewell, my lord. Thorin eyed the two at the door and snorted, shaking his head. He did not want to believe that the man who did the ceremony was a Valar, but there was no denying it, as he could see the crest on the arrows and on the horn at his hip. His teachers growing up made him memorize the signs of the Valar. Each Durin folk knew their creator and his mark, but they made sure to know the others as well. Your mother may just kill me that I let you wed without her, he greeted to his nephew, earning a snort. After she yells at me. But Isa wants to wait till we reclaim the mountain to have a dwarven wedding, Fíli replied with a laugh, keeping his eye on both Isa and Kíli, who was looking green. Thorin followed his sister, Sun's eye, and frowned at Kíli. I'll look after him. Go enjoy your night with your new bride Fíli, and we leave in the morn. With that, Thorin turned from his nephew, a smirk on his face as he made his way back to Bilbo's side and ignored the spluttering behind him. He couldn't help but tease his nephew about the wedding night. He had done it to Fíli, and Fíli in turn would have done it to his son. Stop teasing your nephew, Bilbo chuckled, handing the king a pint of man-made ale. It was disgusting, watered-down brew, but it was all they had, and all the master of this forsaken town offered. Yes, stop teasing my Yasun Irakadad, husband. The mouthful of ale Thorin just sipped sprayed across the room, causing him to cough in surprise, and for the company to pause. Each pair of eyes turned towards their king, smacking his chest, while Isabella merely smiled down at him. Lass, Balin asked with raised brows, but Bella merely smiled towards the white-haired dwarf and sashayed her way towards Fíli, pulling him along to their room for the night, before pausing at the door and smiled over her shoulder, one that screamed mischief. Gamut Nanun Irakadad. Company. Good night, uncle. Fíli smiled up at his wife nervously as he opened the door to their room. Originally, it was his and Kíli's, but tonight it was theirs, while Kí took Isa's room. Bella shrunk down to her husband's size once more and smiled softly. Are you nervous? She asked. Because I am. The fair-haired prince paused and swallowed. I am. I cannot deny this. I love you, Fíli, son of Fíli, Bella whispered as she pressed her body against her husband's and led him towards the bed. His hands instantly wrapped around his wife's waist and pulled her flush against him as a moan escaped his lips. He moaned softly as his wife pressed open-mouthed kisses upon his neck and jaw, biting softly as she did so. Her fingers deftly began to untie the laces to his tunic's sleeves and bracers, letting the latter fall to the floor as she began to tug at the hem of the shirt and the clasps. Fíli shuddered in pleasure as her hands pressed into his bare skin while she continued the ministrations on his neck and jaw. When you pull my pleasure from me, and I you, I will need to mark you. It will be instinctual as you are my mate, and it will hurt, I am afraid, she whispered in his ear as he began with shaky fingers to untie her dress. Bella stilled her husband's hands as he began to push the dress off her shoulders. She was thankful to Bard and Sigrid that the dress she was given did not rest too far down for her imprinted wings, and tail could be seen, but now her husband will see them for the first time. But it was also her scales, that she could not hide the ones that rested upon her chest and back, that wrapped around to her stomach. I have markings on my body. They cover my whole body, and they will feel like scars to your hands. Please do not ask till I am ready to tell you, she pleads, dropping her gaze slightly as Fíli removed his hands before he tilted her head up so her eyes met his once more. I love you, Usvaku, my greatest joy, all of you. It will not matter to me, Fíli whispered honestly to his wife before humming softly and pulling off his tunic for her. He too had scars, and he will let her see his first to comfort her. Her eyes instantly roamed over her husband's exposed chest in interest, noting every scar and mark that adorned his skin. She could see a few scars that ran from his left pec and disappeared under his chest hair that trailed down. Her finger ran down in softly, a soft whine in her throat, as she did so at the fact that he had been hurt. What did this? I was on a protection duty with Dwalin and Uncle when we were attacked, was all he said. And even though he longed for her to be closer, to touch her, but he also wanted her to keep staring at him the way she was. He loved the look on her face as she took him in like that, hunger in her eyes as she roamed his body. It made him feel warm and wanted, desired. Are you going to come closer or stare? He asked softly, holding out his hand to her. Bella smiled and placed her hand in her husband's and let him pull her into him, her hands splayed across his chest. She looked up to him with a grin and started to place kisses along his jawline and down his neck, smirking as he let out a soft moan as she did so. I believe you have me at a disadvantage, Yassith. He growled out softly in Khuzdul. His hands shook as he grasped her hips, and he knew his knees were weak as well. If she continued to tease him like this, he feared he would not last. A little huff of laughter escaped Kisenth's lips as she pulled back and turned around for her husband to finish the ties, pulling her hair to one side to allow him access. Though his fingers shook, he was able to deftly undo them, and he once again began to pull the dress from her shoulders, his fingers never stilling as he felt the first bump of the markings. The dress pooled to the floor at her feet, and she waited for Fíli's judgment, inhaling sharply as his warm, calloused hands ran softly down her back, trailing her left wing, and gasped as his tongue followed his hands, leaving trails of fire down her back. You are beautiful. There are no words in mine or any other language to describe your beauty, he murmured into her neck softly, catching her as her legs buckled when he nipped the spot she favored on him, and chuckling when she moaned. With a confident smile, he bit the spot harder, and in an instant, Fíli found himself pressed into the wall with his wife, pinning him to the wall. Violet red and molten gold eyes peered back at him. You play a dangerous game, my prince, and now you have me at the disadvantage, while she gently slipped down to her knees before him. His eyes were locked onto her chest, just above it, to the starburst scar that rested above her heart, and he knew that he would be asking her about it when, oh merciful Mahal, this time it was his turn to buckle as she nipped and kissed his thigh and hip, while her fingers brushed the shaft of his member and rose to her feet. That is better, she whispered before pressing her naked form against her mate's. Her eyes slipped closed, as did his. They had not cleaved together yet, but they could feel the connection thrum between them, their hearts beating as one. It felt as if their bodies were on fire, the warmth spreading, and it took Kisenth all her willpower not to lose control of her nature. She had lain with other before, a comfort thing for those who were not yet mated, as there was not chance for them to become with child or bite their mating claim. She had never felt this between her past lovers, and now she would never be able to get enough of her husband. Fíli's hands started to explore her body with gentle caresses, memorizing every dip of her curves and ridges of her markings, all the while trying to ignore the parts that felt like scales. Tonight was one of celebration, joining of their love, and he will not spoil it with his curious questions. Not now. Not when he had her pressed against him. Oh, how he longed for this moment. "Fíli, take me to bed," she whispered, plead, as he nuzzled the crook of her neck and placed a soft kiss just below her ear. He didn't hesitate to lift her into his arms and took a few steps towards the bed while laying her down upon the furs. She yanked him up as the bed was man-sized and chuckled as he fell on top of her. "Why have I not noticed your mischievous side before?" Fíli chuckled, amused as he lifted his weight off of his wife. "You are so beautiful," he whispered softly, his hand cupping her cheek before kissing her once more. "Your skin tastes so sweetly," he whispered as he trailed down her throat to her collarbone, paying attention to every sound she made to know if he was doing this correctly or not. "Fíli, di Kulan, my prince," she moaned out as he continued his ministrations. "Please, no teasing," she whimpered, squirming at the sensation of his hair and mustache had upon her body, as well as the kisses. "Shh, let me love you, Yavanna," he breathed, his breath cooling the spot he had just sucked, causing her body to shiver in delight, a slight purr escaping her lips and making her chest vibrate under his palm. "Please, Fí," she half whimpered, half growled, while taking his hand and placed it on her heat. She was wet down there. She wanted more. She demanded more as she looked at him. "Please." He lightly ran his fingers over her lips, exploring as he had done with the rest of her body. She shuddered underneath him, and he curiously inserted a finger inside of her, causing her to moan loudly. Shifting so that he had better access, he covered her mouth with his as he wiggled the finger around. Her body arched into his, her moans stifled by his kiss. It felt as if every fiber of her being was burning as hot as the sun, and she couldn't wait until she'd explode. She buried a hand in his hair as he continued with a second finger, her body yet again moving against her will. It had been a long time since she felt this pleasure, and her mate knew, though innocent, what to do without her having to explain it to him. He groaned into her mouth as her hand snuck down between them and caressed the soft head of in his erection, feeling the tiny veins running across his flesh. Fíli removed his lips from his wife's and pressed his forehead against hers. He was already walking the very thin line, and her touch nearly drove him over edge. "If you wish me to continue as Yungal, to feel me inside of you, please, withdraw your hand, for I am fear I will not be able to," he whispered to her and whimpered at the loss of the warmth around him. "Hurry then," she demanded, her hips rocking against his fingers inside of her. She was on fire, and the coil in her belly was tightening. "As you wish," he grinned while moving his hand and fingers once again, grinning as his wife bucked into him and yanked him closer by his hair. It hurt, hair being sensitive and all, but it seemed to rile him up also, earning a huff of a laugh as he growled, or tried to. As he felt her tighten around his hand, he withdrew his fingers from her and shifted so that he was hovering above her. "Are you ready, Azjungal?" he asked softly, brushing back a loose strand of hair from her face and trailing his fingertips down her jaw. With a deep breath, she nodded, trying to relax her body as he settled between her legs. He took hold of his length and gently pressed it against her entrance. He gently nudged her legs up with his free hand so that he had better access, and took a calming breath as he slowly started to push himself inside of her, his eyes never leaving her face. "Minlana Nubuks me," he breathed out once he was fully inside of her, his eyes clenched shut as he buried his face into her neck and hair, waiting, more willing not to spill instead of waiting before he pleasured her. But the warmth, the sensation, it was nearly too much. Zu lokal hayak. Fíli, I love you too, Bella whispered to her husband. She was close, even by just him being within her, but she wanted him to move. She bucked her hips softly, moaning at the same time as her mate as she created friction. Fíli slipped one arm under her back and caressed her shoulder, pulling her closer to him as he began to move, eager to give Isa what she and he both so desire. But he needed to be closer, his heart near bursting as he felt their bond strengthen. With every shift and thrust, she could feel the coil of ecstasy deep within her, tightening, and a steady rumble was flowing from her lips. Fíli, the sound of his name falling from her lips in a growl, as his vision turning white as he felt something within him snap and the passion grow, an animalistic, possessive side of him. His thrusts quickened somewhat awkward and clumsily from inexperience, but pleasurable nevertheless. Kisenth, he moaned out hoarsely as she ran her blunt nails down his back in ecstasy, her name tumbling from her lips over and over again. So close, Kisenth growled and flipped them over, Fíli's hands instantly grasping her hips tightly as she began to rock, her hips twisting as she did, so that seemed to bring them closer to the edge. Bella kept the pace fast and steady as she leant forward to kiss her mate. She was so close, so very close, and soon he will be hers. Fíli, she cried out as she felt the coil finally break free like a tidal wave, causing her vision to grow white and leaving her past the point of no return. She faintly feel her teeth burying into the soft crevice below her mate's ear as she claimed him, while her name tumbled hoarsely from his lips. He felt his release happened the second her teeth sunk into his neck, the odd sensation of pain being the very thing that caused him to tumble over in pleasure. Both their bodies quivered with their release and pleasure, a constant purr escaping Bella's lips as she bathed the bite on her husband's neck and collapsed upon him tiredly. Content. They were finally one, and with that, they both fell asleep, hearts beating as one. The next morning, Fíli and Kisenth woke, curled next to each other, as the sun began to rise over the horizon and the sky began to brighten. To Fíli, as he looked upon his slowly awakening wife, had never seen anything more beautiful in his life. She was still flushed and pressed against him, her hair a mess and her braid clear in view. I love you, Kisenth, he whispered to her, pressing his forehead to hers softly in the dwarven display of affection. And I, you, Fíli, how is your neck? She asked, worried, while getting up to rest on her arm as she used her free hand to brush away the hair clinging to her mate's neck from sweat and blood. Her brows raised in surprise as she took in the soft pink indents that should, by right, still be a wound. It never pained me at all, he admitted before raising his hand at her shocked expression, and felt the bite. It was healed over, that too surprising him. But it made him feel warm inside at the thought it would be there. What does this mean exactly? It is instinctual for my kind to bite their mate. If you were like I, then you would feel to do it too. It's a claim, stating to others you are mine. Mind you, it's a little possessive and whatnot, but it's instinct for some animals to do so. And though I may look like a descendant of man, I am animal in the sense I am sorry if you hate it. It could easily be covered. She added on at the last second, as her mind finally seemed to catch up. She knew that species beyond her own and Bjorn's didn't like to be claimed as such before. Suddenly bright laughter filled the room. As Jungle, I do not mind this. It makes me happy. Dwaro are a possessive bunch, the beads we give, and actions as well. I feel love to know that I will wear your mark, and for all to see and know I am yours." He chuckled softly. "At least I won't have suitors to worry about now." The growl that left Bella's lips startled her and Fíli both. She had been jealously possessive before, both over her items and Fíli. But that was new. They couldn't help but both laugh at the fact before silencing as a knock rang through the room. "Sorry to disturb you two, but Thorin wants to leave soon, so you best get ready," Balin explained through the door. Though muffled, they both could hear his amusement. "We'll be right out." Fíli chuckled before reluctantly pulling the furs off of him and getting up. "We better hurry and wash before Uncle throws a fit, newlywed or not." Bella smirked at her husband. "Oh, this I know, time limit and all. Home to reach and a dragon to kill." Fíli chuckled over his shoulder as he entered the washroom, completely missing the way his wife suddenly tensed and drained of all color. A sense of dread and grief weighed heavily on Kisenth as she dressed herself in a clean dress that Nori had acquired for her once more before strapping on her swords. She closed her eyes softly and fingered the wedding bead in her hair and waited for her husband to return. As gross as she may feel, the comforting smell of her mate on her skin kept her calm. "Isa?" Fíli asked with a frown as he saw his mate standing still by the window, already ready and deep in thought. Turning to her mate, she forced her face to relax and cast him a smile. "You go and get ready to leave with the others. I'll meet you at the boat. But there is something I must do before we leave," she explained. "Very well, Givashel," he replied, making his way to his one and pulling her down for a kiss, smiling as she let out a huff of laughter before bumping her forehead with his and leaping from the balcony, her mate's laughter trailing after her, though the second she could sense no dwarf and evaded the people as she made her way towards her destination. All pretenses of joy left, and she felt bleak once more. She had allowed herself to be selfish, and now she was wed. That definitely was not bad, but it would make her reveal all the more painful. Her chest ached painfully the further she got from her mate, but ignored it. "Lady Isabella?" Sigrid greeted in surprise as she opened the door at the slight knock. "Hello, Miss Sigrid. Is your father here?" she asked seriously, watching as the confusion flickered to a frown before the young girl opened the door and allowed her in. Kisenth turned to the man that stood at the table, a scowl upon his face as he caught sight of her. "What are you doing here?" "Did I not make myself and my feelings known the other night when your company and leader explained his plan to awaken the beast?" Bard demanded, watching as the woman's face seemed to shift from a blank stare to a scowl and then to a worried grimace. Bella took several steps forward and stopping just at the end of the table where the herbs and other items hung above, and her. She cast Bard a look before unsheathing her swords and laying them on the table, watching as the man's eyes glanced wearily over them before widening. "Do you know why I am with the company? Beside that, my husband is the crown prince, I mean. Did one of them explain to you?" she asked softly with a sigh, and to Bard it seemed she had aged years in that question. He shook his head. "Number." His answer was short, and though he wanted to ask when her betrothed became her husband, he dared not ask. "Master Bard, I came along this quest to kill the beast that slaughtered my brother, his mate, and their unborn babes. These blades are made from dragons, by a dragon," she explained, listening as he inhaled sharply. "But if I should fail in my duty to rid this world of that Morgoth-twisted snake," she hissed, "then you would be the only one to do so, as you are the only one on this forsaken floating village that has the means to do so." Bard watched as her eyes flickered above her and then back to him. Though he could see the pain written in her eyes, he could see the gleam of mischief there too. But what he wanted to know was how she knew it was there, He had made sure to keep it hidden since his mother had passed it down to him. "How did you know it was there?" he demanded, causing the woman to smirk. "Master Bard, who do you think gave the dwarves who forged it the materials to make it?" she asked in a teasing tone, before her face was once again one of seriousness. "If I fail to slay the worm, then it'll fall upon you to kill it if I shall fall." With that, she sheathed her swords once more and began for the door. "If I do fall and succeed to kill it, then I thank you." She paused at the door as a thought reached her. "But please, for the love of ERU, do not kill me if I do rid the world of this beast." And those arrows hurt. Bard stared after the woman in stunned silence as her words sunk in. He was honestly stunned, speechless, and was a little, if not at all, confused about what she meant. Do not kill her. Kisenth quickly made her way back towards where the boat was, to head off. She could hear the sounds of cheering and music as she grew close, and sighed, annoyed as she bustled her way through the crowd to get to where her husband was. "Took you long enough," Fíli chucked as the boat rocked slightly as his wife jumped in before snapping his head around as he heard his uncle's voice. The crowd was cheering and murmuring their joy as Thorin spun and struck his arm out, stopping Kíli from getting on the boat. "Not you. We must travel with speed. You will slow us down." Kíli smiled at his uncle before frowning as he took in the serious look his uncle was giving him. He realized then that it was not a joke, that he was indeed being serious. "What are you talking about?" "I'm coming with you," Number Thorin replied sternly, pushing his nephew back a few paces as he tried to push past. The knot of worry doubled as his eyes took in the chalky pallor of his sister's son. No, he would not risk the life of his nephew. He was better off here to get the medicine he needed. Hurt replaced the anger. "I'm going to be there when that door is opened. When we first look upon the halls of our fathers, Thorin," he managed to choke out, trying to get to the boat once more. "Kíli, stay here. Rest. Join us when you're healed," Thorin told him softly, resting his hand upon the back of his nephew's head in comfort. He closed his eyes quickly as his nephew shot him a look of betrayal. But Thorin would not be budged. He was up all night, nearly listening to him shivering and moan in pain in his sleep. Kíli choked, his chest tightening in grief and betrayal, turning away from his uncle and collapsing on the crates in defeat. Oin sighed and stepped out of the boat. "I'll stay with the lad. My duty lies with the wounded," he informed as he made his way to Kíli's side. Fíli stared at his uncle in disbelief, but Kisenth understood. She could see that her brother was not well, and if she could smell anything beyond the stench of decay and death, she would be able to smell the sickness too. "Uncle," Fíli hissed, "we grew up on tales of the mountain. Tales you told us. You can't take that away from him," he stated desperately. "Fíli," Kíli called, trying to stop his brother, only to be ignored. "I will carry him if I must." He spat out in a last attempt to persuade his uncle. Isa placed her hand upon her mate's shoulder in comfort as she saw them tense in his anger. She did not want him to lose it and strike out, or even raise his voice loud enough for the townfolk to hear. Thorin stared down at his kin. "One day you will be king, and you will understand. I cannot risk the fate of this quest for the sake of one dwarf, not even my own kin." Fíli shot his brother a glance before clenching his jaw and stepped out of the boat, glaring at his uncle as he tried to stop him from going to his brother. "Fíli, don't be a fool. You belong with the company," Thorin stated as he rested his hand upon his nephew's chest, stopping, blinking as Fíli jerked out of his hold. "I belong with my brother," he stated before turning his back on him. Kisenth cast a look up to the mountain and then back to her mate before nodding. She could not leave him here. If they woke the beast then, well, he would come here, and either way he would die. But though her priorities warred within here against one another, she knew what she had to do. Lass, Dwalin asked in confusion as she stepped off the boat, drawing the attention of all the company to her one and brother as well. My duty lies with Fíli. I will not go with you without him or Kíli. I am sorry, she informed them, her eyes scanning over the company in the boat before locking eyes with Bilbo and flicking them to Thorin and back, reminding him of their silent promise in Rivendell. She turned her gaze away from the hobbit to Thorin, who, though looked disappointed, seemed to understand and gave her a nod of approval. We will see you soon, and try not to get eaten by the worm. She sighed out with a twitch of her lips before turning back to her mate, and helped him and Oin tend to Kíli. She focused on her brother and on her mate while the town around them cheered, while the boat sailed down the canal, and while Beaufort and Oin spoke. Her hands were pressed upon Kíli's uninjured leg and hoisted him into her arms as they began to move. No one said a word to the dragon shifter as she carried her brother through the town like a hatchling. Her eyes narrowed as she watched the master's guards shove everyone away, while Fíli and Beaufort lead her through the passageways. She held her tongue as Kíli pled for help, as Oin pled for help to the master, but being denied and harshly shoved away from the foul human's home. And for the first time in a long time, she had the desire to eat man-flesh. Kíli looked up at the loud growl that echoed the open courtyard platform that seemed to still the men around them, including his brother, Beaufort, and Oin. I would suggest you let go of my husband and stop shoving me and mine before I kicked you across the way and into the building over. The men instantly let go and backed away as the woman bared her jagged teeth and scrambled away as they saw her eyes flash with a deadly glint before turning around and began her march once more. She followed the familiar path towards Bard's, holding her brother close. I will find you help, Malzemov, little brother, she promised as she held him closer to her warmth while making sure that her kin were following. Beaufort, seeing where she was going, quickly rushed ahead over the bridge and up the stairs, knocking frantically on the door. Bard swung the door open and frowned, his eyes narrowing at the dwarf on his doorstep. I'm done with dwarves. Go away, he stated before trying to close the door, only for it to jerk as the dwarf grasps the edge of it. No. No one will help us. Kíli's sick. He's very sick, Beaufort pleaded, moving slightly so Bard could see Kíli. Bard frowned, his eyes shifting past the dwarf before landing on the woman and the dwarf in her arm. He was sick, his pallor pale and sickly. He knew that he could not turn them down. With a deep sigh, he nodded. Come in, hurry. Sigrid, Bane, we need hot water and fresh linen, hurry. He ordered his children while Kisenth stepped through the door once more and walked over to the bed in the corner and laying down her brother. He will be all right, Fíli, she whispered to her husband as he rushed to. Kíli sighed and grasped his brother's hand while he moaned in pain. No, Bilbo stammered out, fearful, as his heart heavily and rapidly thumped in his chest. He stared fearfully up at the dragon before him. He knew that his parents, along with his ancestors, would be furious. No, indeed, Smaug hummed before he began to move once again. You seem familiar with my name, but I don't remember smelling your kind before. Who are you, and where do you come from, may I ask? Smaug snakes his head closer to the little being and breathed. Bilbo shook his head and jerked his eyes down as he saw a white glow to the right of him. Of course, there nestled in the gold was the Arkenstone. Bilbo stammered soundlessly before managing to get any form of words out. I come from under the hill. Underhill? The furnace with wings hummed bored. Bilbo nods and sneaks another peek at the Arkenstone. It is not far away from him. Maybe he could get closer to it. And under hills and over hills my path has led, and through the air. I am he who walks unseen. He continued to stammer out while taking little steps towards the glowing stone. His body wanted it, craved the jewel, but he shook that darkness free. He did not want that blasted Matham. Impressive. What else do you claim to be? Smaug snakes his head forward until his teeth are inches from Bilbo's face. As Smaug exhales, Bilbo grimaces at his smell of death and decay. He continued to stammer out self-proclaimed titles from the incidents getting here, all the while getting closer to the stone. It was the next question that caught him off guard. And what about your little dwarf? Friends? Where are they hiding? Smaug asked angry, leaning close to the creature and following it around the column while still breathing it in. Dwarves. No dwarves here. You've got that all wrong. Bilbo tried to lie, but really he knew it was of no use. Oh, I don't think so, Barrel Rider. They sent you in here to do their dirty work while they skulk about outside, he roared, furious, throwing out the gold around him. But I want to know where you got the other scent. Where is that pitiful, weak creature? I can smell it on you, thief. I cannot forget the smell of another dragon, a shifter, a protector one at that. The dragon roared, causing Bilbo to freeze on the spot and breathe out in shock. What? Another dragon? He stammered out in horror before an image of Isabella in the goblin caves came back to him. My kind was hunted and killed out in the very beginning of the Second Age because of our true forms. No, it can't be. Bella pressed her hand down on Kíli's wound as Beaufort left to get the king's foil. She had ignored everyone as Bard spoke to her about the dragon, answering him in a clipped tone that family came first, and she would not be able to. She couldn't. Fuck, she hissed as she jerked to her feet and rushed towards Sigrid, yanking her back just in time as an orc dropped down from the ceiling. She doesn't know how she missed them coming, but then all her focus was on Kíli and the poison that was spread throughout his system. She shoved the child and her siblings under the table before withdrawing her swords and began her attack as several more dropped from the roof. Her ears hurt from the loud screams, but she would not let it deter her. You will not get them, she roared in the black tongue. Protect, kill, protect, kill, repeated over and over through her mind as the orc pack just kept coming. Her body shifted as she sensed a presence at the door and swung up just as the elven guard ducked from her attack before joining the fray. It was chaos. The pack never seemed to stop coming until the black speech filled the air and they began to retreat. Kisenth let the princeling and his captain to deal with the rest, while she helped to pick Kíli up from the floor and lay him on the table. A sense of calm settled over her as another rumble reached the village. Her eyes slipped closed as she centered her mind before snapping them open as Beaufort came running back into the small home with the plant in his hand. The earth shook under their feet as a familiar roar reached her ears. Her eyes snapped to her husband's in horror as her hands pressed down on Kíli, as Oin tried to heal him, but it was of no use. She could smell that the poison had spread too far. There is no time. Smaug will soon be upon us. The poison has spread beyond Altheus's reach, she hissed before giving her young brother a sad look. I hope you can forgive me one day, but we cannot lose you, she whispered before shoving her fingers and hand into her breast. Fíli cried out in shock and horror as he watched his wife, rip out her heart, the blood flowing from the starburst wound she made, along with the trails that flowed down her hand from the still beating heart before snapping out of it as Kíli screamed. What are you doing? Oin yelled as he took over holding Kíli down. I'm giving him a heart. It will heal his wound, and more. she explained before shoving her brother's heart into Kíli's chest, forcing it in and willing the bone and flesh to mold around it. Accept it. Legolas and Tauriel inhaled sharply as they watched on. They knew the significance of a dragon giving away a heart, the pros and cons that came with it as well. Yes, it healed any wound of any kind and could, in some cases, bring the dead back. But it prolonged life by a dragon's age, immortal like the elves, and in some cases, it can corrupt the heart's holder. Are you sure his will is strong enough? Legolas asked the dragon, causing her to snarl at him, the house shaking and scaring the young ones behind them. Fíli watched this all with a sense of horror and relief as he watched the wound on his wife's chest close. He would have to ask her later. He carries my brother heart. I cannot let my mate's brother die, she snapped back in Sindarin. Kíli, I need you to listen, okay? Listen, Bella ordered, as Kíli screamed and asked for the voice to stop. The voice you are hearing is my brother Tauriel. It is his heart that is healing you. You need to calm and just listen to him. Please, Malzama, it'll pass. Kíli did as she asked, letting the voice clear into a soothing hum as he felt something settle within him. He could feel the poison leaving his body. It was a strange sensation, before finally there was no more pain. My sister chose well, young prince, a voice whispered softly in his mind. You will be a worthy protector of my heart and spirit. What did you do? How did you do that? Owain asked, stunned, as he looked at the starburst scar on Kíli, and then to the black ooze that seeped from the wound. He watched until there was no more poison, and then the wound healing. Now is not the time. We need to leave, she sighed before jerking up as she felt the monster fly above her head again. We're not leaving. Not without our father, Bane stated loudly, pushing past the two elves. Bella turned and cast her gaze upon the children. If you stay here, you and your sisters will die. Is that what your father would want? They cast a look, one that told her they knew she was right. Bard, wherever he may be, would not want them to stay. Another roar filled the air, causing everyone to burst into action. Bella hoisted her little brother into her arms and followed the children down to the boat and carefully placed him next to her. Mate, I'll go and make sure the orcs have fled the town. Help people along the way, Legolas informed before jumping to the next walkway. I need you to come with me. You'll need to protect them, Bella stated suddenly, causing the Dwaro to frown, and for the elf to pause before stepping onto the boat. Fíli stared at his, one intently as he held his brother. Something seemed wrong. He knew something was wrong the night of their wedding, and even more so the day after. Her body stiff, and a sense of sadness seemed to cling over her when she looked at him. It made him dread something. He could not shake it. Smog flew over once more and released a torrent of fire in the channel next to theirs. Bella snarled and turned to face her mate, her heart's clenching as she realized that this may very well be the last time she would see her husband. And if she did survive, then it would be the last time to see him look at her without horror, fear, or disgust. Dilokal, remember what I asked you at Bjorn's? She asked softly, drawing his attention back to her. If I was a monster, if your kin saw me as a monster, would you still love me? Of course I would, give a shell. I will love you no matter what you are. You're my one and my wife. He replied, matter of fact, and without delay. It gave her hope and the courage she needed. Yet, that hope was small. She kissed him one last time and pressed her forehead to both Fíli and Kíli before looking back up, letting her mate and brother to see her real eyes. Then I hope you'll forgive me one day, Di Lokal. she whispered to him before jerking up and staring down the elf. Protect them. She could hear that snake Smog laughing in the sky, and tonight was the night she will avenge her brother and his mate. She cast her friends, brother and husband, one last look before flinging her wings out, her back hunching and body growing before she pushed off in the air. The last thing she saw before transforming fully into her natural form was the surprise and horror on her mate's face. Kisenth will have to live with the consequences. Fíli watched with horror as his one pushed up from the boat, rocking it slightly, and began to shift. Her dress fluttered around them as she burst from human form to that of her true form, and Fíli, for the life of him, couldn't understand, or why she didn't tell him. My kind was hunted and killed out in the very beginning of the Second Age because of our true forms. If I was a monster, if your kin saw me as a monster, would you still love me? I hope you'll forgive me one day. He snapped out of his horror-filled thoughts as a mighty roar echoed across and over the screaming town of citizens, and he felt his heart lodge in his throat as he watched his wife collide with the massive beast in the air. "Ayessa!" he screamed as she was thrown from it. "I will not let you kill any more innocent." Bella roared in the sky as her talons locked onto the red beast's form and spun. She knew the worm could speak common and would not be able to understand her own. He was, after all, a Morgoth dragonborn, and not Yavanna made. "I will avenge my kin." Smeug roared in fury and turned upon the dragon shifter, his gold-red eyes locking onto the massive form in slight shock and fear. It was bigger than he, a glinting gold upon her breast, and deep violet, but he will not be deterred. "I will slaughter this town and all who are in it when I kill you." He chuckled before diving left, his breast aglow with flames. Everyone that was fleeing watched as the dragons dueled in the air, fearful of what was to happen. One dragon had come, and half their homes were now on fire. It brought desolation to Dale and the mountain. Now there were two. They feared what would happen when the red drake of old was defeated. What would the other do? A one larger than the red drake. Another dragon. Nori yelled in surprise as he caught the sight of another massive form in the sky, drawing the attention of the whole company, Thorin included. "How can this be?" He breathed out in shock, but Bilbo knew the truth. Smog's words echoing in his head beyond the thought and weight of the Arkenstone. "I cannot forget the smell of another dragon, a shifter, a protector one at that. Mahal save us if it turns towards the mountain," Balin whispered in shock, his heart hammering fearfully in his chest as he watched the lake burn and the two dragons fight above it in a vicious battle. Ori clutched his brothers tightly. Wouldn't Isabella be able to stop them? Shouldn't she be stopping them now? "It is her," Bilbo blurted out, never tearing his eyes away from the sky, not even when he felt all the company's eyes on him. Smog said he could smell another dragon on me. A dragon shifter, a protector. Every single member of the company breathed out in shock and snapped their eyes to the bigger form of the two in awe and horror. "This is why she would not tell us her form," Balin whispered out. "She could have told us she was a protector. Nearly all Dwarrow of Durin's folk would know. No, I don't suppose they would, but we learned of the protectors. I thought they were all dead." Good Lucoin informed with a furrowed brow. He too couldn't tear his eyes away from the beasts. Balin shook his head. "No, one survived. I cannot recall the name, but the legend I knew all too well. The protector was a friend of Durin folk, had fought side by side with Durin himself and Ar. This explains much." Balin sighed, turning his eyes away from the battle. "She said she was old, older than the creation of Arda, and had been there when Mahal had carved the seven fathers. Mitarje. Some of the Dwaro breathed out and waited. Bella roared furiously as Smaug's claw sliced through her felt flank, tearing muscle and scales away from the bone. It would heal. The scales will regrow in time, but it hurt. With a vicious snarl, she twirled, breaking fire down upon him. It would do nothing but distract him. Her flames would only work once he was dead, but ice would work. You are weak and lazy, no longer the protector you once were, Smaug taunted as he circled around her. I can smell the dwarf on you. I can smell his pleasure, mating with a pathetic creature. You are not a dragon. She barrel rolled in the air away from his swiping claws once more and kicked up before leveling, chuckling darkly as Smaug spun and dropped till he too got the wind back under his wings. She had done considerable damage to him so far, her front claw ripping away the jewels and scales in his breast for Bard, to have more of a chance to slay him if she fell. No, it is you who is a mockery of dragons. My kind came first before yours. We were pure and made by Yavanna. No, you're just a pathetic worm, she taunted, her laugh echoing across the burning embers of Lake Town for all to hear before, followed by a rumbling, vicious snarl. Fíli and Kíli kept their eyes to the sky as Tauriel pushed the boat through the canal, avoiding falling homes and more torrents of fire that Smaug laid before Isabella could stop him. Fíli had seen glances of his wife soar above them. It was then that Fíli could let his heart know she was alive. Beyond the sounds of growls and twisted darkness of speech he had heard leave the defiler's mouth. Oh, valor, Kíli wheezed out as he felt a splash of something warm his arm, his skin, bare skin, burning painfully to the point he shoved his hand in the water and pulled it out enough to see his skin knitting back together. That hurt. What did? Beaufort asked before blinking at the singed clothing and pink flesh. Dragon blood. It burns. I don't know if it was Namads or the worms, but it hurt. Kíli explained, wincing as he saw his Nadad's stricken face. She'll be okay, Fee. Beaufort nodded to this. Oh, aye. The lass is tough, and this explains why. I'm concerned how the others will take it if they're alive and can see it. A dragon. Ye married a dragon. If the other kingdoms won't respect Thorin for taking back Erebor, then they will now, even fear. I'm for having a dragon as kin. The dragon shifters are a noble line. Many of the realms still hold artifacts and stories of their kind. Your lady is the very last, the strongest of them all, from what tales have said. Tauriel explained, and it was then that the children of Bard caught on, finally getting over their shock. But she came to Da and told him to kill it if she fell. He has a black arrow, Tilda exclaimed, worried, her eyes shifting to Bane and back. Da! Sigrid called out as her eyes spotted her father on top of the bell tower, bow in hand, and shooting arrows at the dragons above. We must get the arrow to Da and tell him not to hurt Lady Isabella. Bane blinked, his eyes going to the statue of the master, before looking down and seeing the boat in which he'd hidden the black arrow his father had asked him to keep safe. Bane cast a look towards his sisters, determination setting in as he made his decision. His father needed that arrow, and so he shall give it to him. He will also need to tell his Da that the purple dragon was not a foe. As their boat passed under a hanging hook, Bane leapt up and grabbed it, swinging clear of the boat. Come back! Bane, come back! Fíli yelled as they tried to grab him, but it was too late. The boy was dashing across the fiery pathways with a determined stride. He quickly gathered the arrow and pushed his legs the fastest he could go to reach the tower. Kisenth and Smaug locked talons once more, her jaws wrapping around his throat, and shook viciously. Blood flowed down her throat and onto her tongue as she finally ripped something vital enough to cause the beast to bleed as they battled. A victory cry left her lips as she pulled back. Foolishly, she had let her guard down. In doing so, Smaug was able to slash his free claw across her breast. No, she heard someone cry out as she fell the short distance down into the embers below and crushing the homes. She could not move beyond, placing one arm against the slash to hold the blood flow and wait for it to heal. Dragons healed fast to mortal wounds, but wounds inflicted by other dragons or beings of darkness took a little while. Duh, Bane cried out, the heat licking his skin as he made his way to the top. Bard turned with horror and stared at his son. Bane, what are you doing? Why didn't you leave? You were supposed to leave. Bane's voice quivered. I came to help you and to warn you. No, nothing can stop him now, Bard replied to his son, shaking his head in dismay and casting a look out into the burning town. Nothing can stop them. But the big one is Lady Isabella, Bane cried out, his eyes going wide as the ground shook with the impact of said dragon's body. Bard whipped his head around to his son before looking back towards the felled dragon in horror. He was shooting at it as well as the red worm. He thought back to the visit she made that morning be arriving with the others. Her face was set in a painful grimace that he knew she didn't realize, and her eyes glinted with determination. I came along this quest to kill the beast that slaughtered my brother, his mate, and their unborn babes. These blades are made from dragons, by a dragon. If I fail to slay the worm, then it'll fall upon you to kill it, if I shall fall. But please, for the love of ERU, do not kill me if I do rid the world of this beast. Those arrows hurt. He turned to the fallen dragon in horror as the mighty worm Smaug landed near them, with gleeful laughter escaping his jowls. He now knew what she meant by not killing her now. She had tried to hint it without telling him, and she had failed. Smaug laughed again as he pushed up from the ground, ready to finish off the wretched town of men. The tower rocked as Smaug crashed through the top, wood crunching and falling around them just as Bard fired his last arrow. Bane cried out as he fell over the edge, one hand snagging the edge and the other the black arrow as he did so. He called for his father when it settled, the heat licking at his flesh once more. Bard threw himself down, his hands grasping his son's just as the wood began to splinter and crack, yanking him up with a grunt. Who are you that would stand against me? Smaug rumbled out, his eyes locking onto the man and child. Bard jerked as his eyes caught the arrow he shot, buried into the beast's chest. But it was not enough to kill him. It was then that he realized that a good chunk of scales were gone and left them open. His eyes flickered to his broken bow and back, a curse escaping his lips. Smaug rumbled out a laugh, his claws and wings crushing the houses around him to dust as he stalked forward. Now that is a pity. What will you do now, bowman? You are forsaken. No help will come. I killed the wretched protector. Is that your child? Here, he laughed tauntingly. You cannot save them from the fire. They will burn. Smaug taunted, licking his jowls. Before Bard could move a muscle, the dragon burst forth with a snarl, his breast aglow with flames. He held his son close and waited only to pause as another roar filled the air, louder and more vicious than Smaug's point. His eyes snapped open to see Lady Isabella, her body colliding with the red beasts, sending them both into the river and burning homes. I told you that you will not harm them, the purple dragon roared in a more guttural tone, but he could hear Lady Isabella under it, proving his son's words to be true. The dragons battled in the wreck, hovering in the air above them. He could see with ease that the lady was winning, her claws sharper and larger than the worms, and her eyes glowing with fury as she clawed at Smaug's wings. Bard now! She roared, and Bard didn't hesitate for a second. He fixed his into the bell tower fixture that still stood and used his son to be his lance. Little to the left, Bane. That's it, he whispered softly before letting the arrow fly as he saw his target. It landed solidly halfway through the dragon's breast, causing it to cry out and struggle, but Bella would not let it go. She spread her wings and pushed up, bringing the worm high into the air as it struggled by its neck, and grinned as she hovered high in the sky. "This is where you end," she whispered gruffly, her vision tinting black, and she knew that there was little time left. With a mighty roar, pausing all who could hear and see, she pushed the arrow deeper into the beast's breast, and then opened his jowls, dislocating his jaw before letting her flames burn hot. Everyone watched with bated breath as the large dragon breathed flames into the other, its body glowing bright before finally crumbling and glowing like the dying embers of a hearth. Fíli felt his heart lodge in his throat as he watched his mate stagger in the air and then fall, her body colliding on the far edge of the saw. "Isa!" he cried, his heart breaking and agony tearing at him as he tried to jump from the boat. "Let me go, Kí. I need to find her." "Fíli, stop. Stop. You cannot swim that far. Wait till we get to land, and then we will find her. I promise," Kíli explained as he pulled his brother back into the boat and locked him in his arms, his own heart heavy with the situation. "Fear not, little prince. My sister has sustained more injuries. She will heal. She carries my mate's heart. Apophis will keep her alive well and aid her in mending. It will be a time before she will be conscious." The voice whispered softly in Kíli's mind, easing the grief slightly, but it did not help much either. By the time they had reached the shore, the sky was a dusty blue of a rising sun, and Fíli quickly took off down the sands before they even hit sand with Kíli, Beaufort, and Oin on his heels. He jumped, dodged, and jerked around debris of Lake Town that washed up on shore until he finally found her. She was no longer a dragon, but her height was the size of Bjorn, with her one wing covering her modesty. Red pooled under her and towards the lake, steam rising from it. He cried out, falling to his knees beside her, and bowed over her head, hand tangled into her hair. Oin pushed past Beaufort and Kíli and made his way over to the lass with sad eyes and stepped around her, carefully lifting the wing and sighing. 6 long, jagged wounds that would need to be tended to immediately, but he was relieved she was still breathing. But now he needed to make sure she stayed that way. "I need yarrow, white willow bark, and blood moss. Yarrow looks like little white flowers in clusters. Willow bark is green leaves with a white underside, hard to miss, and blood moss is everywhere. I'll need some bandages and water. See if you can find clean water and fill this up for me," Oin ordered, holding out his water pouch for one of the boys to take, before looking to Fíli as the other 2 scrambled off. "She'll live, but I need you to help me, Fíli. She needs to be covered, and you are her husband. You'll have to help me dress her wounds and stitch them closed." Fíli jerked up and nodded with a grim, determined look before getting to his feet and walking back along the shore for anything that he could use beside his own tunic for coverings. Thankfully, he found what was to be a curtain or even bedding. It was little damaged and not that damp. Without hesitation, he ripped the cloth down the middle and made his way back to his wife. "Here, these should do just to cover her modesty," he explained, handing Oin one while he knelt down at her legs and began to shimmy the cloth underneath. Thankfully, Oin helped, and by the time the other 2 got back, she was clothed somewhat. Her hips were clothed, and thankfully, the knot was just at the very edge of the jagged wound, sitting between the 2 claw swipes where one ended and another began. Oin raised his brows at the plants the other 2 had. He thought they would be gone for longer, as the plants would be hard to come by with the sickness. "That was quick. They are the right plants as well." Kíli and Beaufort shared a look. There was a small pond in the woods that seemed untouched by the sickness. They were near and around it, the tree weeping over it. The voice, her brother, whispered they were the correct plants, and as we turned back around, the pond was gone. A blessing from the Valar, then. Oin replied, relieved, and thanked his maker and her lady. We must hurry. Kíli, Fíli, and Bofur worked tirelessly to make pastes and blends, while Oin cleaned the wounds and instructed them to pack them before covering the wounds with the blood moss to use under the bandage. Thankfully, he was able to keep the ones Bard gave him for Kíli to use, and they were long and plenty enough to wrap one wound at least. Kíli gave up his undertunic, though, with Fíli to use as a bandage for the wound that ran from her hip to her knee. You found her then. The voice of Bard caused the four Dwaro to jump in surprise. Fíli and Kíli with blades up and ready. Peace. I saw her falcan came to offer aid, as well as these. I don't know how she lost them or when, but they were on the beach in the sand. Fíli jerked forward, putting away his dagger and quickly taking the blades from Bard, who instantly relaxed the second he let them go. Thank you. Her swords are always with her. She only trusts few to touch them because of the power. They're made from her brother and his mate. Kíli blurted, surprised at that tidbit when it washed across his mind. They're made from their ashes. The hilt is their tooth. Bard dipped his head. Then I am glad to return them. I will lead our people to the mountain when we gather all that is left. The elf had left with the prince, north, where one had followed an orc. I must return. The people have appointed me their leader. We will need passage across the lake, and something to carry her. We cannot leave her, Fíli gritted out. There is not much, but there is the boat you came over in. We have very little, but perhaps some debris and a blanket to make a makeshift stretcher, Bard offered, watching as the blonde dwarf relaxed in relief. It is the least I can do, as they call me Dragon Slayer, and yet it is she who killed him. Fíli shook his head. She will not want that title, but I thank you. Bard nodded, and then frowned before removing his own coat, shivering at the bitter brush of early winter, and handing it to the dwarf. I will help you get to the boat, Master Dwarf. We will need to use our coats to carry her and her bulk easily. With that, the four Dwaro removed their coat, while Bofur went to get 2 chunks of wood palings from debris to attach their coats to carry Isabella. It was going to be a long day, she whispers, pushing herself up on the rock platform, and bumped her head with her mates to comfort him. I feel better. I am no longer in chains. Chains? Bard asked, startled, as he caught the tail end of the creature's words. A few of the dwarves bristled, but it was the one who began to speak to him that explained. We were trying to pass through Mirkwood, but the elves captured us. One shot at him, and Lady Isabella didn't take too well of her, one being threatened and attacked, because of the king thought I was a monster and demanded me to tell him what I was. When I refused, he had me chained by the devices that the orcs used on the skin changers, with spikes in the shackles resting against the skin. He tried to break me, Bella explained in a feral hiss. Bard felt nauseous at the woman's words. I will take you, but payment will be needed. As the company began to murmur and gather onto the boat, asking Bard if they could be supplied with clothes and weapons as well. Once they reached the town, as Thorin only managed to grab 3 packs when Bilbo got the blades, Fíli and Bella were still conversing. Bella, of course, kept the tail and just shifted away the gills as she leant against her one and allowed his heart to soothe her. I tried to make sure you would not be hurt, she whispered. I should have listened. Into you, Cajamel. Because of me, you were shackled. He whispers into her hair, letting the tear escape into it. Men Lananubux me. It is not your fault, Fíli. They would have done it either way. I will gladly be chained if it meant you were safe, she explained firmly. Su'u lokal hai, his kulanzos we pa, Yuvon Coarda. I love you, sweet prince, more than all gold. In Arda Fíli smiled at the words, remembering when she had first told him that, and yet now he knew the full meaning and impact of them. Though Bella knew her mate understood the phrase, he would not know the whole truth till it was time, and then hopefully he would understand. Lake Town was something that made Bella's skin crawl as she peered up at the rotting timber, and even underwater she could smell the filth. She could taste it. If the water was this bad, she did not want to know what the air above tasted like. She swam along to the sound of her mate's heartbeat to keep track of it, and soon enough she was face to face with Dwalin under the water, his eyes wide as he took her in. Mahal bless, Dwalin thought, as he took in the golden tail that seemed to swish around her, the dress floating around it. His eyes snapped to Isabella before him and widened as he took in the jagged, toothy smile. And was she laughing at him? Now, Dwalin, and you can't breathe underwater, she teased once she helped him up to the surface under a home, grinning at his gasping breaths. The others stared and then ducked under the water when Dwalin began to splutter the word, tail, golden. What did you shift into lass? You be some kind of fish. Good Lucoin whispered loudly as he earned a smack from Oin when he began to look like he was about to yell. This is what people in the other place called a mermaid. It is a creature of myth, each one different from the others. It was this form I liked the most when it came to mind. Now why are you all in the water? She asked, and then suddenly the smell invaded her senses, causing her to gag. If the taint was bad under the water, it was surely worse above it. But now it was acquainted with the stench of dragon. Not her clan. No, she to others would smell like fire and earth, a forge burning with timber and not coals. She was natural, formed from the valor of all things green and growing. No, this dragon smelt like death, brimstone and darkness. What is it, Isabella? She heard Nori ask while she felt her mate and Kíli by her side as she slipped into the water. The dragon still lives. She gasped out. His stench floats down from the mountain, she warbled before shaking her head. We need to move. Bard is expecting us, and then we can get into some warm clothes. Hurry, Thorin grunted, concerned, but for now, it was not the time to dawdle. Soon enough, they were near where they were told to go, scrunching up their noses at the fact that they had to come up into the bargeman's latrine. None were too happy about it, but Bella couldn't help but giggle as she listened to them moan and whine about it. Seriously, we're swimming in the water, you do know this? She remarked softly, causing the dwarves above to still and curse at her. Tilda, Sigrid, I need you to gather a dress and go down to get. Bard began to explain, trailing off as he realized he didn't know the lady's name. Isabella. Her name is Isabella. The golden-haired one who he suspected was her betrothed, explained. Sigrid turned onto her father with a scowl, much like the one her mother gave. You let a lady crawl up through the latrine, father? Well, no. Can she come up, or does she need to stay in the water? Bard asked the dwarves, unsure, for Fíli or Oin or anyone else didn't know what a dragon's true temperature was at all. Key? Fíli called, his eyes flashing to his brother. You know bits about dragons? I know whatever the whispers tell me, like I know she will be fine, but it takes time for wounds inflicted by darkness to heal. Kíli replied before blinking and frowning, confused. I don't know. I just seem to know these things now, and he's not always helpful, but I can understand the words you said when you called Bard Dragonade clearly. Why? I just need to know if she has a fever. Her temperature is hotter than I've felt it, and I am unsure if it's a dragon thing or fever. At Fíli's words, Oin frowned and placed his hand on the lass's wrist. She was indeed hotter than before. Kíli frowned, and they stopped rowing, carefully shifting his body to place his hand upon his nomad's forehead. She is colder than what we normally would be. We, as dragons, run hotter than that of the twisted worms. I am unsure, little raven, if it is because she knows her true heart is nearby, instinct, or she is ill. Her brother cannot answer. She is colder than what they would be. They're hotter than that of the twisted worms. Fíli frowned, but nodded and placed his hand back in his wife's hair. When they're not above water, when he can feel the steady thrum of the earth below his feet, then he will fix her braids. Right now, his stomach was in knots of the thought that the boat could rock and tip, his unconscious wife drawing in the lake. But he worried for how the others would react to her. He would give up his right to rule and live apart from his kin if they could not accept his wife. I am worried for the others, Fíli supplied, after a long, tense moment of silence as Kíli and Bofur began to row. I know they'd be alive, all too stubborn to die, but I worry about their reaction to Enth. It'll be right, lad. They'll be wary at first, but will accept her, Bofur explained, his usually jovial tone now serious. I and my kin will accept her as she had saved our lives many of times, though the family is loyal to Durin and its line. She too is Durin and has done more than any of us expected. She has helped Bifur and no longer suffers battle dreams. He has peace and has claimed a debt. I follow you, brother. Always, and you know this, Kíli replied as he put together his brother's worries. He too would leave with his brother. He didn't, and never should, hope for the throne, and he'd rather never set foot on Dwarrow land again if it meant he got to be with his brother and sister. He had never been separated from his brother for more than a day or two, and it wasn't going to happen now. I cannot speak for both myself and good Lacorn, as Thorin is our cousin, but I will never think poorly of the lass. I will support you in this and stand before all with a ready axe, if many disagree, Oin replied, as he checked the wounds with a frown. There was no change, surprising since he had seen her heal wounds instantly. Fíli. Hearing his name from his one's lips caused his eyes to snap down, hope blooming in his chest that she was awake, but to see that she is still trapped in unconsciousness. But though his hope dwindled a little, he felt warm that even in her unconsciousness she still thought of him. You'll find yours one day, Fíli whispered to Kíli as he looked up into the dark, longing eyes of his brother. I know this. I will be blessed if my one loved me even a fraction of what Issa holds for you, Kíli replied earnestly. And it was then again that Fíli saw how grown his brother had become. Bofur chuckled. I agree, Kíli. Her love for you, Fíli, eclipses all the stories I know. You'd be the most envious dwarf in history, a dragon for a wife who loves you above all, who has seen Mahal himself and was made by Yavanna. Fíli dragon heart. Kíli chuckled, grinning boyishly as Fíli cast him a scowl. Get to rowing, you annoying burr. Fíli muttered back with a slight grin before focusing his attention back to his wife, softly caressing her face with his free hand. When they finally got to the edge of the shore, it took all four of them to lift Issa out of the boat, nearly dropping her as Oin slipped on the loose rocky sand. It had taken them a good solid day, and more after that, walking from the bottom of Long Lake to the ruins of Dale, where they finally rested. I'm glad she is not awake now, Fíli whispered as they walked through Smaug's desolation. He and Kíli, along with Bofur, had been told tales of Dale and Erebor, and of course the destruction that hid it. His eyes cast sadly around the scorch marks and corpses, mainly the children. He knew his wife adored children, had seen it with Estel in Rivendell, and then to Bard's children back in Lake Town. She would be devastated to see the demise of so many, and not been there to stop it when she could have. She would be devastated. So many children. He finished just as even-toned, but yet unable to hide his grief. Beaufort, Oin, and Kíli looked down. They too thinking back to the times when they actually saw her around children. The way she seemed to glow, unlike her time with Fíli, she was tender and vulnerable beyond what she allowed them to see. A vulnerability that the company would never admit to as they watched her openly express her words and feelings to the elves. Then they remembered her time with Bard and his children, the way she seemed to transform before their very eyes, as she regaled him with stories of old, of stories they had never heard of before. She told them of Durin and his wandering years, of Beren and Luthien. She had even obliged them of the tale of Glorfindel and her role in Gondolin. The children, including Sigrid the eldest, had been regaled of the tales, their laughter ringing through the night as they curled around her by the fire. It was also that night she had admitted that she regrets leaving Arda and letting the fire drake take Durin's home. She would have fought for them, with them, and they would not have lost so much. She was fit to be a mother, yes. This would have utterly destroyed her and blamed herself. We'll stay here for tonight and then make our way to Erebor tomorrow to see if all is well. Something dreadful has settled in the pit of my stomach, and I can't quite shake it, Kíli murmured. And the others agreed while clearing a small body-free home and starting a fire. Oin moved over to where they rested, Isabella, and began to inspect the injuries again. They were slightly healed, less red, which means there would be no infection setting in, but he still didn't want to risk the wounds. He would have preferred to redress them, but there were no more clean bandages or water to do so. "How is she?" Fíli asked softly, taking a seat by the healer's side. "Better than when we found her. She no longer bleeds. But tomorrow we will need to reach the mountain quickly. The bandages need to be changed. So does the paste in her wounds. But we have no clean water to speak of or cloth to use," Oin replied without looking up. Thankfully, the young prince was on his good side. Fíli sighed. "That is what I feared. Can you check her? Wings to see if they're right in her tail. I can check, but I don't know how good I'll be at it. I'm a healer for people, not animals. No offense, lad, but the things you're asking me to look at are animal parts," Oin replied, giving the lad a stern look before grunting as he ran his hand over the bone in the lass's wings. How did she hide them when she was with them? Her tail, too, to be exact? I have a question, and it's bothering me greatly. But how did she hide these? He asked finally, causing Fíli to blush brilliantly. Do you recall when Dori asked her about the markings on her skin and brie? Fíli waited until Oin, Kíli, and Beaufort nodded before continuing. Her tail must have wrapped around one of her legs and her wings around her frame completely when we, joined the markings, covered her, and I could have sworn when we were at Bjorn's, the markings were in different places. Oin nodded with thought. We'll have to ask the lass when she wakes. I'm sure all will be curious when the time comes. Now, everyone get some rest. And we eat tomorrow and make our way to Erebor. It'll take another day to get there. Fíli nodded and leaned back against the wall, with Kíli at his side and his wife's head on his lap. His and his brother's hands curled in her hair to reassure that she was still there with them. Kíli let out a little sniffle and clenched his eyes shut, willing the tears not to spill as he pressed his face into his brother's shoulder. He will be strong like Fíli, who had yet to cry, who had yet to break. How do you do it? He whispered softly to his brother. She's your one, and I can't help but cry. In truth, Fíli didn't know how to feel. He knew that his heart was lodged in his throat, that the tears burned at the back of his eyes, and his throat ached with the need to scream to the Valar to heal her. But But he could not do that now. Not when they're in the open. Not when his wife was so defenseless and his brother upset. Because I need to be strong for her and for you right now, when we are safe. And if all else is to fail, then I will let the tears fall and my walls crumble. He whispered back, "Sleep, Key. I'll take the first watch." Fíli would not be getting sleep tonight, his mind too preoccupied with everything that had happened. He had been raised from a young age to hate dragons as much as elves, but his one, the one that Mahal had chosen for him, or maybe he for her, was unlike the creature his mother and uncle told him. There was no darkness or hate beyond the hate of said darkness, and she loved him beyond anything he has seen. She has proven that. The gold through her hair has proven that, and her giving Kíli a heart had proven that as well. For no twisted dragon would give their heart to another, for they only loved gold and all things that glittered. He finds his gaze firmly locked onto his wife's face, how it seemed to be carved from stone, much like they. But she was just as beautiful now as she has ever been, and his dreams for them has not changed. No, he would not give up hope for his own babes. He hoped that it was something he could give her, a child of their own, even just one with her colorings, his eyes, and little purple wings. He swore that when she woke up, he would prove every day how much he loved her, and that if, Mahal forbid, everyone else hated her or mistrusted her, that he and Kíli both would be forever by her side. She has suffered too much to lose the ounce of happiness in her life. This he knew. When Fíli woke, it was in a jolt, his breath hitched and heart racing, a sense of doom settling in the pit of his stomach. "Fí, are you all right, Nadad?" Kíli asked softly, concerned as he saw his brother's ashen face. Fíli waved Kíli's concern away as he began to get up and move to his wife's side. She was hotter today, and they'll need to change her bandages and poultices. He wasn't sure if she could get infections or not, but this wasn't a normal creature, but one of evil. "The lass is strong," Beaufort murmured from his spot at the window. "She moved slightly last night, closer to you, but not much." A sigh of relief escaped from his lips, tension he hadn't realized he had letting go. But still the knot of dread, doom, stayed settled in the pit of his stomach, only churning as he glanced at the mountain. "We'll need to keep her away from the treasury. Who knows what that worm did to the gold? We better not risk it." Oin muttered as he began to check the wounds, a frown on his face. "We need to leave immediately. There will be more herbs, clean bandages, and water. Kíli, we need to move." Fíli called out to his brother while hauling on the pack and grasping the makeshift wood that was used as the rails. Now, Kíli, Oin, and Beaufort quickly gathered their things and lifted Isa into the air. Bilbo roamed the vast halls of Erebor, anything to get away from Thorin and the others. They did not seem like themselves, Thorin most of all. He had been searching non-stop for the blasted shiny rock and left all open. There were more things to be done than dig and dig. Bilbo could see they were tired and starving. Not only that, none seemed concerned for the others. Was Isabella okay? Fíli, Kíli, Beaufort, and Oin? Did they make it out, or did one of them die? He had seen Isabella fall and fall, crashing into the burning embers of Lake Town. He had seen her get back up and fall once more when Smog fell. With a harsh sigh, he began to wander again. He needed fresh air. When Fíli, Kíli, Oin, and Beaufort got to the gates of Erebor, they stopped and stared in concern at the gaping gates. Kíli and Fíli shared a look that said something was wrong. The doors should have been the first to be fixed, or even have someone waiting to see if they lived. "Hello? Bomber? Bifer? Anybody?" Beaufort yelled, fear gripping his heart as they marched carefully over the fallen debris to get inside. Each of them called out, while Oin navigated them through the hallways. Erebor was vast and hollow, broken rocks, and a husk of what it used to be, decaying woodwork and cloth, bones scattered here and there that made the four of them uneasy. Where were the rest of the company? Did they even survive? They called once again, the princes staying silent while Beaufort and Oin called out for their kin. Bilbo, at hearing the voices, panicked. No, he wouldn't allow the four dwarves seep to the same sickness that the others are following. Wait, it's Bilbo. He's alive. Oin yelled, relieved, as he and the others came to a halt, just in time for Bilbo to catch them. Stop! You need to leave. We all need to leave. Bilbo gasped out urgently, trying to catch his breath. Beaufort stared at him confused. We only just got here? We can't leave. Isa needs clean water, bandages, and more medicine. Kíli explained, since his brother was stoic-faced. What has happened, Bilbo? Can you tell us where the others are and where we can go to see them? Bilbo nodded and then cringed back, his pale face growing paler as he stared at the jagged wounds peeking out from the makeshift bandages. This was worse than he hoped, but better than death. His heart dropped as he realized then that she wasn't going to wake, and it was up to him to break Thorin free from the madness. Come this way, quick! The others found a storage room away from the treasury before everything, he explained, gesturing for them to follow and hurry, leading them the way he memorized. That was the longest and furthest route away from the golden thrall of gold. What's happened? Before what? Kíli demanded, worry now churning in his chest. I have tried talking to him, but he won't listen. The fear and desperation made the dwarf uneasy. Thorin. He's been out there for days, looking for that blasted stone. He doesn't sleep. He barely eats. He's not been himself. Not at all. It's this place. I think a sickness lies on it. He tried to stress, tried to explain. Sickness. This is the word that caught Fíli's attention the most, and he knew the curse upon his bloodline had struck again. A deep sigh escaped his lips as he looked down at his wife, glad that they had decided not to take her near the gold. It is as I feared then. Thorin has fallen to Thrower's madness. Ahmad warned me before we left when Kíli was asleep. He explained, pained, wincing when Kíli shot him a look. What else has happened? Fíli! Kíli! Beaufort! Oin! Ori's voice called out cheerfully, and soon the company, those that were not in the treasury, were rushing towards them, halting when they saw the body they carried. Nori swallowed. Is she? He didn't want to know. He really didn't. She's alive, but we need medicine. Fresh water and bandages, Oin explained in a rush, while the others began to scatter and clean the table for the four to lay her on. Someone needs to explain to me what has happened and what has been done, Fíli demanded as he moved to stand at his wife's head, eyes landing on Balin. Before Thorin went mad, he sent a raven summoning Dane. He was informed by the ravens the humans intend to come here with an elven army at their backs. Balin began to explain before settling his eyes on Isabella. It's best he never leaves the treasury. He threatened to hurt Bilbo and accused Isabella herself for stealing the Arkenstone, even though she was not here. Each word had Fíli growing angrier and angrier. For now, he will tend to his wife, and then he will deal with Thorin. A growl left his lips as he thought of the gates and turned towards the Ree brothers and Dwalin. I need you to go fix the gate. We will need it soon. I gave sanctuary to the men of Laketown. Tauriel and Legolas had helped them, but they left to ride north. And Thorin? Dwalin asked gruffly, keeping his eyes away from Isabella, either in shame, anger, or something else in modesty. She was still a woman. "I'll deal with him later, hopefully," Fíli muttered in reply. Kíli turned towards Balin and Dwalin with a scowl. "Take me to Thorin." The Fundin brothers hesitated for a second before nodding, and began to lead the youngest prince deeper into the mountain to where Thorin was. Kíli didn't dare take his eyes away from what was before him. He didn't want to see the empty shell that was to be their home and tarnish the childish views of his dreams. He wanted to see Erebor like what his Ahmad and uncle told him, what all the others had told him of its splendor. His heart stammered, and the voice whispered in the back of his mind that the twisted worm's magic rested over the gold, making the pull to it even stronger. It was a lure, a safety measure that they, the twisted worms, all did. A haze settled over their minds, trapping them in their greed and thrall for gold, and then death. They would be eaten. "You will not be affected, little raven. My heart will not let you be trapped in this curse. Their magic does not work on us." Kíli felt at ease by the words before tensing as he stepped into the treasure room. Gold upon more gold, reaching far back as he can see it piled high to one end of the room and swept down, the ground barely visible. A voice rang out, causing Kíli to tense and the Fundin brothers to cringe as they watched Thorin, a Thorin they didn't know, walk out from a passageway. His voice was wrong, deeper and gravelly than they recalled. Gold, gold beyond measure, beyond sorrow and grief. A rage that Kíli hadn't felt before settled over him as he stood stoic, as he stared at the unknown king and watched as he picked up a handful of gold and let it fall through his fingers in a haze. Even when Thorin looked up towards him, he could not see his uncle, but a stranger. His uncle was never obsessed for gold like this. Behold, the great treasure hoard of Thror. He welcomed, throwing what was ever in his other hand. Kíli did not catch it, did not move to catch it, and it was only Dwalin's fast reflexes that kept the stone from flying over the young prince. "Welcome, my sister's son, into the kingdom of Erebor." Kíli did not look back when he turned his back upon the king and left. That night, when only Kíli, Fíli and Nori were left in the room to look after Issa, while the others searched, did Kíli tell his brother, "I don't know who that dwarf is, but it isn't Thorin." He looked crazed, Fíli. "He didn't even care that you weren't there. He didn't even yell when I turned my back on him. He just went right back to the gold," Kíli explained to his brother, who was wiping away the grime from his wife's face and neck. Fíli didn't turn to his brother, but kept his eyes focused on his wife. "There isn't anything we can do, Kíli. Ahmad warned me of this sickness, warned me what Thror was like. Nothing could break the king from his madness. Fíli is right. The only person who could have helped him is lying unconscious on this table." Nori replied with a tired sigh. "We've all tried, but one by one we all lose our thoughts for the gold. Fíli, you need to come with me." Balin called from the door, his hands twisting together in nervousness. He left Dwalin and Bilbo in the throne room with Thorin, discussing Arkenstone. "Why?" he asked plainly, annoyed. Balin sighed. "I apologize, lad, but the king is summoning you." The company present watched with caution as Fíli jerked up, his back ramrod straight, and a twist of fury on his face. He didn't utter a word as he kissed his wife softly before storming past Balin towards the throne room. Oh, he knew where his uncle was at all times thanks to Nori, and he was furious. "Thorin, we have searched and searched," Dwalin growled out. He was cut off by the king. "Not well enough." Dwalin glanced at his brother wearily as they marched into the room. "Thorin, we all would see the stone returned, and yet It is still not found. The rage caused 3 to flinch, but Fíli. He just stared at the dwarf before him with a stoic face. "You called my king?" Fíli gritted out, his eyes staring through him. "Fíli, it took you long enough to come see me," Thorin replied, unimpressed, as he took a seat on the throne once more. It took all of Fíli's willpower not to snarl at him, his hands clenching by his side. "I was busy making sure my wife was tended to." Bilbo and the Fundin brothers cringed as they saw the king begin to grow red in the face, and they stepped closer to the prince, be it for his protection or the king's. "That creature does not deserve your attention," Thorin hissed furiously. "She is nothing but a worm, and will steal my gold from me. The Arkenstone must be found, and then I can have my armies destroy all that." "It is nothing but a rock," Fíli roared. "A rock you waste time on searching for." The gates were open, and our food grows low. My wife lay unconscious and wounded, and all you care about is a rock. It is the king's jewel. Am I not the king? Thorin roared, causing Bilbo, Dwalin, and Balin to flinch back at the harshness. "And that creature is not your wife. She will be killed first." Before anyone could react, Fíli attacked, his hands curling around Thorin's hair and throat in a vicious vice, his elbow connecting with Dwalin's ribs before kicking out his leg and knocking down Balin. A dull roar was all he could hear as he pushed his uncle forward, his head down, and marched his struggling form forwards towards his wife. Wide eyes watched, and then followed Fíli, who did not look like Fíli, and Thorin, who was spitting and screaming treason, but could not risk breaking Fíli's hold, as the majority of his hair was curled around the blonde's fingers. Kíli jumped to his feet and froze as he saw his brother's face. And then Thorin. His heart dropped as he moved out of the way and shoved Thorin's face towards Isabella with a snarl on his lips. "Look at her. Look at her. She was nearly killed by that worm who took your home. She does not fight now because the last thing she saw was my face, my horror. She died fighting to bring back your home, not your gold. Look at her. Look at what your greed has done." The words echoed around the room in a shattering boom. No one, not even Kíli, had seen Fíli so unhinged, so vicious, and even now committing treason for attacking Thorin. Insane or not, he was still the king. Thorin stilled, his eyes roaming the body before him, the haze lifting ever so slowly. It was a struggle, the whispers in his head screaming at him that this was what they wanted. Ease him and then kill him for his gold. A roar escaped the king's lips, a mix of insanity and anger, his hands clutching at his head. Fíli let him go and watched with flat eyes as his uncle stormed from the room, the others following after them. How did it get to this? That was what the majority of the company were thinking when they saw the army of elves and the men, the Arkenstone in Bard's hands. Fíli knew, of course, giving a note of what was going on to Bilbo as he caught him trying to leave the gates, but he had hoped beyond hope that this would send his uncle out of his downward spiral. Only it made it worse. "He will kill you if you come back, Bilbo," Fíli whispered as he lowered Bilbo down over the wall. Green eyes stared up at him with determination. "It doesn't matter." Bilbo regretted many things, many but not this. He would never regret giving the Arkenstone to Bard, to barter what was owed to them. Bard understood the second he read the letter that Bilbo gave to him and hid the jewel in his pocket before anyone else saw it. But now, he regrets hurting Thorin even though it was necessary. It was not his Thorin anymore, not the Thorin he had shared smiles with, stories, and not the Thorin Bilbo had given his heart to. A war was coming, and so he did what he must to protect the ones they love, to make sure that Isabella was not harmed any more than what she has been. Thorin felt his breath become shallow, his heart beating loudly in his chest as a wave of anger rushed forth at the sight of a man holding what was rightfully his. He felt his arms lower the bow in his hands as he became enthralled with the gem of his family. They have the Arkenstone? How? Kíli whispered to his brother. Thieves! How came you by the heirloom of our house? That stone belongs to the king. Good Lacon yelled furious, and the king may have it, Bard stated, tossing the gem up and catching it. In our goodwill, Bard put the Arkenstone back into his robe. But first, he must honor his word. Rage turned Thorin's vision red. They are taking us for fools. This is a ruse, a filthy lie. The Arkenstone is in this mountain. It is a trick! It is no trick. Bilbo trailed off, swallowing heavily as the company, minus the princes, turned to face him with disbelieving, betrayed eyes. I gave it to them. The stone is real. I gave it to them. Thorin let out a growl of anger before he turned his steel-blue eyes upon the thief, the traitor. Bilbo pushed around the company that blocked him in and made his way bravely towards the king, knowing that he was surely to perish under the wrath of Thorin. You! Thorin breathed out in disbelief. You would steal from me? Steal from you? Number, I may be a burglar, but I like to think I'm an honest one. I'm willing to let it stand against my claim. I took it as my 14th share, he explained, never looking up at the king before him. He didn't want to see the sick dwarf before him. He had to believe that Thorin Oakenshield was still there and not king under the mountain. In a blink of an eye, before anyone could move, Thorin had his hand around Bilbo's neck and had him pressed against the wall. Curse you! Cursed be the wizard that forced you on this company! If you don't like my burglar! Gandalf's voice boomed over the others. Then please don't damage him. Return him to me! You're not making a very splendid figure as king under the mountain, are you? Thorin, son of Thrain. Kíli and Bofur quickly moved forward and pulled Bilbo from their king and towards Fíli, who in turn gently pushes Bilbo toward the rope he'd hung the night before to climb down the walls. Be safe, Bilbo. If a war is to truly come, then stay hidden, stay safe. I'll try. Be careful as well, Fíli. If you were to die or get hurt, then nothing in Arda will stop Isabella from her wrath, Bilbo replied while throwing his coiled rope over the wall. The prince gave him a sad smile as he disappeared. It did not bode well for anyone, that smile. Fíli and Kíli did not stay to hear what was said next, making their way quietly back to Isabella's side. If there was to be a war, then they would like to spend time with her before it started, before Mahal forbid they get injured or died. Neither of the brothers wanted to leave her, but they would have no choice, as their honor and their status wouldn't allow them to sit out. All kings and princes must join the battle, must be on the front lines where it is most dangerous. They sat with that for a while, until Nori came and told them that Dain had arrived, and a battle has begun. But Thorin would not allow them to join. They must stay and protect the gold. I'd like to be alone with her. Go and put your armor on, brother, Fíli muttered to Kíli, who didn't dare protest. When he was finally alone with his wife, he placed his head upon her chest and listened to her heart beat steadily, and the only sound that comforted him. I need you to wake up soon, Uslukwe Kurdu, dragon of my heart, he whispers into her skin. I need you to hear that I love you, that I don't care what you are. He let one tear spill over before jerking up, a blade at the ready as the door opened, his eyes locking onto Thorin's. Get out. Thorin's heart twisted. Fíli, how is she? How does she look? Now leave, or I will cut the braids from your hair myself. Fíli snarled, furious. The last time he had spoken to his uncle was when he was once again threatening to kill his one. The king stumbled back in surprise, his eyes flicking from Fíli to his wife and back, snippets of words and memories in a golden haze resurfacing. "I am well again, Mim Rasdith." "Little son." Fíli narrowed his eyes and stared at his uncle before nodding and lowering the dagger when he saw the truth. Thorin was no longer garbed in cloths and fur, the crown no longer upon his head. "If you threaten to kill my one again because of what she is, then you will have no heir, and your braids will be mine." Thorin's eyes closed, and his shoulders slumped. "I understand, and I am sorry, Fíli. I truly am. We shall see," Fíli muttered, before placing a kiss upon his wife's lips and whispering his love to her, before turning to face his uncle, picking up his swords as he did so. "We have a war to win first." The roar that echoed across the battlefield stilled every man, elf, dwarro, and orc. The pause in battle was decided by fear and horror of all sides, as each set of eyes snapped to the entrance of Erebor. Loud, booming sounds followed soon after the roar, and in a mere moment, a large violet dragon smashed through the door, puffing smoke from its mouth with every snarl and rumble. Men, elf, and dwarro began to scramble out of the way of the dragon's furious stare before crying out as one when it burst forth. Snapping teeth and burning flame joined the brutality of claws and tail. This was the wrath of a dragon. It was not desolating the land like Smaug had done, but it was killing the orcs in its wake and moving forth from the mountain. It was vicious, a spiral of death and fury. "Kisenth!" Gandalf's voice boomed across the field, causing some of the eldest of elves, including Thranduil, to double-take the raging form. But Kisenth didn't dare acknowledge the wizard as she tore through the field of orcs. Even in her haze, she didn't harm her now kin and friends. As she searched for her mate, she felt his pain, his fear, and had felt the very second the blade pierced his flesh and the slowing of his heart echo in her ears. He was dying, and she needed to find him. She could not lose him. Another roar escaped her lips as she scanned the land and battlefield before stretching out her wings and pushed up with such force that the downforce of her wings caused several to either fall to the ground or stumble over as she took to the air. Sunhal Sevek, to everyone's astonishment, but of those who fought with Kisenth before in the last alliance, watched as the orcs' weapons were suddenly ripped violently to the ground at the sound that left the dragon's mouth in the air. "Mid Vershan." The voice echoed a second after the first across the field, and the warriors of the free race found that their spirits for battle seemed to rise, as their weapons seemed to thrum with energy and strength that they could not explain. The sound of a hurricane tore across the field, followed by the heat of flame against the fleeing orcs as Kisenth finally caught sight of her beloved as she circled around. She pushed herself faster, throwing all her power into her wings as she hurtled towards Ravenhill. As she grew close, she shifted into her smaller form and curled, a loud boom being heard as she landed on the stone, sending up debris in her heroic landing. "Isabella!" The voice caught her ears, and her head snapped around towards Thorin, who was struggling to fight off the orc that she had seen at the cliffside before she flew them to the Carrack. She breathed in sharply to let out a torrent of flames, but only to freeze as she caught the scent of her mate upon the orc filth. "Where is my mate?" She roared towards the filth, charging forward just as he felled Thorin with a cheer. Her body collided with the white orc harshly, her claws digging into his flesh and ripping out his arms. "Where is he?" "You carry his blood." The orc just laughed in her face as he bled out beneath her. She snarled in fury, savoring the fear in the pale orc's eyes as he glimpsed into hers, and in a split second, her teeth ripped out his jugular. With a rumbling snarl, she tipped her head to the sky and roared before getting to her feet once more. Her hand dug into her chest as she strode forward, not even caring of the fact she was now naked, and dropped to her knees, leaning over Thorin, who was staring into the sky instead of her naked form. She didn't say a word before ripping his tunic and shoving the heart into his chest, none too gently before growling low in her throat as he began to thrash. "Except, listen," she growled low in her throat, coming to her feet before crying out in agony, her hand clutching at her chest as she felt the bond to her mate snap with the last stutter of his heart. "Fíli!" She flung herself towards where she felt her mate, her husband, and fell to her knees beside him. His body was slowly losing its warmth, and his heart no longer beat in his chest. His eyes were open, and his hair splayed around him. A cry tore from her lips as she pulled him close, and without hesitation ripped her own heart from her chest and clumsily shoved it into her mate's. Her words to him in Rivendell rippled across her mind. "If you were to perish, then I would do anything to save you or join you." Her vision grew dark as she fell onto her side, her wing falling to cover her. She did not have much time, but still used the last of her strength to push her heart one more time, until finally her body seized and she drifted. The last thing she saw was her mate taking a gasping breath. "I am sorry, my love." Fíli was drifting in the dark abyss, his body no longer in pain as he did so. The memories of war fresh on his mind, as well as the terrifying roar of his wife, his sweet Enth who had risked her life to save him, his kin, and the town of men. Yet he had gone and foolishly gotten himself captured and killed. Now he will never be able to tell her he was sorry, that he did not view her in the way she feared he did. There was nothing that could wipe away the agony on his wife's face as she turned hers away from his. She had nearly died with that knowledge, and now she will never know that he loved her, wings and all. "All is well, son of stone." The voice reminded him of home, of his father and the mountain. It eased his mind and lulled him as he drifted. Then there was pain, fire-hot agony that coupled with memories not of his own. A scream tore from his lips as the pain radiated from his chest outwards in pulsing waves, and with it came more memories, one upon the other. Memories of golden light and silver glow, caverns and gems, deep rumbling laughter with the sound of clicking metal and stone, harmonious sounds of the trees, of starlight whispering gently from the night sky, memories of laughter and love, peace and security, pain and anger, horror beyond words, as he watched kin fall to the darkness, as the trees burned, war, agony, Glorfindel, friends dying and falling, homes destroyed, friends turning their backs upon me, attacking with viciousness she did not deserve, Darylth and Apophis, more laughter and love, home. Scene after scene washed through his brain, searing their way into his own memories. He knew that they were his ones now. He should have known, but they could not register till now. Till he saw himself sitting on the back of a pony, his hair glowing softly in the sun, and eyes warm, no fear to be seen. Bree, confusion and affection. The trolls and her fury at seeing him hurt. The viciousness she dealt to the trolls. Rivendell. A deep understanding washed with exhaustion and deep affection. The mountains, his name whispered fondly. The fear she felt when she charged from the tunnels and rescued them. The amusement and concern as she helped Thorin down the cliff. "I love you, sweet prince, more than all gold in Arda." He watched it all in pained silence, felt her agony on top of his own, and then he jolted, a scream tearing from his lips once more, the taste of blood upon his lips. "Fíli!" He could hear his brother's cry, sense his concern. His hands flew to his head, blocking the sound of clanging metal and death. He could hear it all, smell and taste it all. It was overwhelming, and then it was silent. He could not hear, smell, or taste the battle around him as he saw his one still form, blood pooled around her and staining the snow. His hands shook with a disbelief, pleading to his maker that this was just a nightmare, that this was not true. "Kisenth? Uslukwe Kurdu?" He called, pleading as he rolled her. A deep keen escaped his lips, morphing into a scream of agony as he saw the gaping wound upon her chest. Fíli didn't care that the blood burned his flesh as he pulled her close to his body, her head resting under his chin, begging for her wake up. "Wake up! Please wake up! Don't leave me, Mizim. Please, I cannot lose you. Fíli, no!" Kíli's cry echoed through the silence as he saw his brother and sister. "Thorin, Thorin. She won't wake up. Why won't she wake up?" Fíli cried out, his eyes clenched shut. Thorin came to a sudden halt, his heart breaking as he saw the scene before him, his eyes closing with regret before kneeling down. "Mim Razdith, you need to let go. She's gone, Fíli, she's gone," Thorin whispered, painful, pulling Fíli into his arms as he broke down. His eyes turned up towards Kíli and Dwalin. "Build a stretcher. We can't leave her here." Everyone in the camps fell silent as they caught sight of 4 Dwaro walking in from the battlefield. But their gaze didn't stay on the King of Erebor and his nephews, along with the other. No, their eyes were on the makeshift stretcher and the creature woman laying limp on it that they carried. The company rushed forward, horror in their eyes as they caught sight of Isabella, everyone freezing as they took in the blank face of Fíli, who was covered in blood, his clothes tattered. He didn't even look at them, his eyes unfocused as they made their way towards the Durin's tent. "No, say it ain't so!" Nori choked out, shocked, rushing with them into the tent. Thorin sighed as he lowered the stretcher down on the ground with the others, stepping back as Fíli moved and lifted his wife from the ground, making sure he didn't jostle her wings. Her body lax in his arms as he carried her towards one of the cots. "What happened?" Gandalf asked morosely as he stepped into the tent. He had heard the whispers of a woman being carried through the camps by the Dwaros and knew something bad had happened. He moved closer, his eyes landing on the open wound upon her chest. "Oh, can you help her?" Fíli asked, never tearing his eyes away from his one's face. "No, I cannot." Gandalf sighed, leaning heavily on his staff. "She gave you her heart, Fíli. It is the greatest sacrifice for a dragon shifter, but she gave me a heart in Lake Town." Kíli stated, confused, causing Gandalf to frown. Thorin spoke next, and I up on Ravenhill. "Tell me, do you hear a voice in the back of your head if it is needed?" Gandalf asked curiously. "Yes, it was painful until Issa told me to listen to it. She said it was her brother," Kíli replied, causing Gandalf's eyes to widen. "Darolth, which means Thorin, carries Apophis's heart. I had always wondered." He sighed before turning his eyes back upon Fíli. "I cannot hear her, but I can feel her still. With each beat of her heart Can you not just pull it from my chest and give it back?" he asked, turning to look at the wizard with tears in his eyes. "No, Fíli, it does not work that way. She knew what she was doing when she had saved you. She knew that her death would mean your life, and after thousands of years, the 3 of you need to know that it is a blessing to receive a dragon, Shifter's heart, even just a piece of it. You'll be stronger, heal faster, but you will not age. A dragon's heart comes with a dragon's life, and she has gifted you the most precious gift one could give, Gandalf explained, stopping as Fíli let out a choked sob, collapsing over his wife, and scrunching his hand over his jacket that covered her naked form. He would live a life without his one, but he could not have the mercy of feeling the pain, of joining her wherever she may be. No, he was cursed to walk the lands with two hearts beating in his chest, and a sense of his, one without her physically being here. Why did you do this to me, Osjungel? How can I carry on without you? He choked out before praying to Mahal to bring her back. He let out a few more tears before sucking in a deep breath, and locking the pain away, he lifted his head slowly and cast a hollow look towards the company. I would like to clean her up. Will you give me a few moments to do this? I shall call for you when I am done. His voice was monotonous, and it caused many to worry, for they have never heard Fíli speak in such a way. For he and Kíli both were always full of life. Would you like for me to help you, Nadad? Kíli asked softly. Fíli shook his head, standing, and began to gather the things he would need. No, I would like to do this alone. Kíli opened and closed his mouth a few times, but finally gave up with a sigh, his shoulders slumping forward as he followed his uncle from the tent. They all lingered around, pulling up branches or crates to sit on, while havoc ran around them. Owain began to assess the king as he saw the torn tunic, his eyes widening as he stared at the scar tissue that he knew was never there before. Bless my beard, that's new, but it looks old, he blurted out, poking the scarred tissue with slight awed confusion. He had seen the effect of an instant heal before his very eyes. But still, this was astounding. It was a life-threatening wound. It should have killed him. And yet, I was speared through the chest by Azog. She had killed him before shoving the heart in my chest. It was painful, feeling the blood and power rush through my veins and heal my flesh. He explained, pulling his tunic aside to show the starburst pattern upon his chest, where she had shoved the heart in. His face was a grimace, as he remembered the pain, even though he could not feel it now, beyond a dull ache of worn muscles. But he remembered the cry that left her lips screaming for Fíli, while the others outside spoke or sat in silence. Fíli was in the tent, peeling back the coats from his one's body. She had deep gouges from her fight with Smog that were half healed and had been torn open once again, as well as the gaping wound in her chest that was a reminder she was dead. With gentle and soft movements, Fíli soaked a cloth and began to rub away the blood from her flesh, the best he could, making sure that she was clean and lay in a resting position. He ran his hands reverently over her wings before dragging over 2 more cots for them to rest on. It was now that he realized that the markings that he had felt and saw on their wedding night were her wings and her scales. I didn't even get to tell you that I forgive you, and that I could never hate you for what you are, he choked out as he began to clean her hair, pulling apart the braids and setting the beads on the small table next to him. I was horrified at first when I saw you shift, but then I really saw you. You were beautiful as you fought with Smaug, and I can never forgive myself for that being the last thing you saw besides my death. Oh, my sweet Kulan. His whole body stiffened as her voice whispered in his mind. I will never get to hear your voice from your lips again. Why did you do this to me, Osjungel? He finished, braiding the courting braid, and the familial braid, and lastly, the marital braid back in, before standing and pressing a kiss upon her lips as he covered her with furs. You can come back in, he whispered hoarsely as he opened the tent flaps. The company jumped to their feet and made their way back inside, Bilbo joining them this time since he had been free to leave from one of the elven healers' tents. Gandalf, what are her kinds? What did they do when they... He trailed off, unsure on how to ask the question. Gandalf sighed softly. They burnt them and cast the ashes out over a far range. But since it cannot be done, as she was the last of her kind, I am sure she wouldn't mind being cast back into stone. Fíli nodded and turned to look at his uncle. I wish to entomb her. Then it shall be done once all have been returned to stone. She will be the last, as your one, and as your wife. Thorin stated softly, placing his hand upon Fíli's shoulder. The tears welled up in his eyes, and he felt the world around him slowly crumble as he buried his face into his palms. We will need to tell Glorfindel. I have already called for them. Gandalf sighed, slumping tiredly on his borrowed staff. I did so as soon as the battle began, and they should be here soon along with Radagast. They will not take the news well either. Should someone send word to the forest? Ori asked softly with a frown. Wouldn't Lord Orome need to know as well? He called her kin. Gandalf blinked and blinked again in stunned silence. Lord Orome? Yes, he performed Isabella's and Fíli's wedding in Lake Town. She summoned for the woodland master, but he came. Kíli piped up this time as he laid a hand upon his brother's back in silent comfort. Couldn't he help? He's a Valar, is he not? No, he cannot help, Gandalf stated slowly in shock. He was not the one to create her. He cannot fix or bring back the dead Kíli. The others slumped at the news, disheartened. There was not saving Isabella then, no chance of bringing her back. Fíli felt his breath quicken and began to struggle to take breath as he clutched at the coat and furs on his wife. Someone grab him! Owain roared as he saw the young prince began to pale and tip. Dwalin reached out and snatched up Fíli as he fainted and laid him gently next to his wife. The healer sighed as he made it to the young prince's side. He fainted. I was waiting for this to happen the second I saw you with her. It hadn't sunk in yet. This I could see. And I was waiting for him to finally snap and panic. Thorin sighed and pulled Kíli into an embrace as the younger burst into tears at seeing his brother fall apart. I too was waiting for it. What shall we expect and do when he wakes? Nothing but be there for him. He won't be well, and I don't know how he will take it. He may fade, Owain warned, causing the company to inhale sharply, their own tears falling freely. Gandalf sighed and fell heavily into the only free chair. He won't. Her heart won't allow it. The sky was clear, and Fíli found himself standing in a field of gold, not metals or gems, but of near chest-height grass, or was it wheat? His eyes roamed over the unfamiliar flatlands and hills, seeing nothing until his eyes locked onto a long figure facing towards the setting sun. His heart raced. He knew that figure. He would know his wife anywhere. A smile tugged at his lips as he pushed off into a run, ignoring the fact that he had no weapons, and in a simple tunic and pants. He didn't even care he was barefoot. Isa! Give a shell! He called before coming to a complete stop, a few steps away from his wife, his heart thundering, and then nearly coming to a stop as she turned to face him. She was dressed in clothing that he had never seen before, very form-fitting, but her hair was loose and shined as the sun haloed her. He was so delighted at seeing her. Fíli did not notice she wore no braid, and the gold was no longer in her hair. The beauty took his breath away, and he could never understand what she ever saw in him. He was ordinary for a dwarf, below that, and odd because of his coloring and station. Do not be ashamed of your father color. You should take pride in the fact. It is a gift. Treasure it as such. The words she spoke, what felt so long ago, rung in his mind. The way her eyes darkened at what he told her. The words stuck to him on their journey when he noticed looks in Bree and in Rivendell. A sudden sense of wrong began to lodge in his throat as he finally registered that she did not move or greet him. and she did not wear the smile always for him, but a sense of agony Fíli had never seen on her face before. A sob tore from his wife's throat, and he moved forward to comfort her, only to watch in horror as his hand went through her. "No, no, no, no!" he screamed mentally, his chest heaving, trying to get air. He stumbled away as he watched his wife cry, the tears burning into the ground. "I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go home," she choked out, collapsing to her knees. "I just want to go home. There's no love on this world. I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home." Thorin jerked awake as a scream tore through the tent, his eyes going to Fíli in panic. The king got to his feet in an instant, rushing to his nephew's side, just as another scream more painful than the last filled the night air and calling for the others. "Fíli, Fíli, wake up!" Thorin yelled, jerking back as his nephew struck out. Nearly every night he had a nightmare, and after a few bruised cheeks or a broken nose for Dwalin, did they learn that they need to duck back fast. At least it wasn't a dagger. They made sure to take them before he went to sleep. "Thorin?" Fíli choked out, blinking away the tears as reality slammed back into him. "I was dreaming over her again. She was still alive. Oh, Mim Razdith, I wish it were so. I too dream of her and Kíli as well. You know, it is the hearts that do it," Thorin explained, shooting the others in the tent, a look for them to leave. As he pulled Fíli into his arms, Kíli went to join his brother and uncle, practically throwing himself over his brother in comfort. No one knew how, with Isa's death and everything after it, that he held strong. Only at night, when Fíli slept, did he show how broke he was inside. Kíli cast his uncle a look over his brother's head and raised his hand. "Balin has sent a raven for Ahmad." He signed, watching as Thorin's eyes raised and then closed. "Go back to sleep, Mim Razdith. But we are here now. Go to sleep." Thorin whispered to Fíli like he did when Fíli was but a dwarfling, and got comfortable the best he could without disturbing the shroud behind him, and prepared for another long night. It had been a month when the first signs of something had stirred Fíli from his wife's side. There were, of course, the sounds of the camps, and the sounds of the preparations of burying and burning the dead still. They had started with Lake Town and the fields before making their way to Dale, and now finally Erebor. There was more dead in Erebor than what anyone had imagined, and it was then that Thranduil had broken from his stoic mask, as he saw just how many women and children died in the dragon's original attack. But that never bothered Fíli. He did not help, nor was he expected to when his one was the hero, and no, he didn't want to think about what everyone was calling her. He just couldn't face it. It hurt him every day to hear the whispers of what they said, and wants to see her when they didn't even know her. A few had decided at one point to curse and praise that she had died for the fact she was a dragon, even going so far as to try and destroy her shroud. That was till one of them found himself with Fíli's dagger in his side. The other two had suffered a shaving and banishment, which was taken out by the company and the king, Dane proceeding over it with his support for his kin. It was also decreed that Isa was, and has always been named, Dwaro Friend, one that Ori could back up, as they had found a book written by Durin himself in the library. No one had tried to attack Isabella again, but the praise went up when they found out how old she was and who she was exactly. The House of Durin was blessed to receive such a blessing of her in their line. That always angered Fíli, for if it wasn't because of him or this accursed war, she would be alive and he would be dead. What is going on? He asked Kíli as he stepped out of the tent that was now situated in the middle of the camp to keep Kisenth protection. Elves were spotted, not the Mirkwood ones. Thorin has gone with Bard and Thranduil to see Huid Island, Kíli replied, his eyes flickering back to the tent and then to his brother. There has also been ravens and missives about Namad sent from all the kingdoms in Arda: Gondor, Rohan, Dol Amroth, Lothlorien, Lindon. With each name, Fíli's shoulders tensed, and his heart grew heavy. Many kingdoms knew his one, and he never realized how many till now. But he knew who could be coming. He had sent a raven to Rivendell not long ago, summoning Glorfindel when they didn't hear back from them after Gandalf's. It is Glorfindel. Fíli breathed softly to his brother. Go tell Uncle I summoned him. Kíli frowned and watched as Fíli slumped forward once more as he made his way back into the tent, before he turned and made his way towards where the commotion was. His heart stammered painfully in his chest as he remembers Glorfindel and the fact that he was her brother, her Kíli, as she had claimed. Uncle, Kíli called, stilling the arguments in the camp. Before him stood Dane, Thranduil, Bard, and of course, his uncle, along with another army of elves. No, not an army, a company of elves. Kíli? Is it Fíli? Thorin asked, worried, the frown melting into concern. Kíli shook his head. He summoned Glorfindel. He has the right to be here and to know. Fíli is waiting for him in now the tent. Glorfindel took the time to scan the faces and felt his heart drop as now the anger had faded away into deep grief. Dread pooled in his chest as he eyed the camp once more, heart hammering heavily, and finally he turned towards the Dwarven King. Why is my sister not here to greet me? Where is Enth? Where is she? Glorfindel, you need to follow me, and you're chosen as well, Kíli explained, gesturing for the two elves to follow. We were unable to make it to the battle in time. Glorfindel and I were making sure the pass was safe. We were able to cull the goblins that decided to venture forth from the battle, and then we tracked down the fleeing armies, Aristor explained, as he gripped the back of his chosen's tunic to keep him from collapsing. How bad is she? The look that the young prince gave him was one that Aristor had seen many times in his life, one that his chosen had done as well. It was a look of someone who was about to give grave news and didn't know how to explain it. His shoulders slumped, but not enough to alert his near catatonic chosen. My brother, Kíli stammered. He's not well. He's hardly spoken, and they wed. Aristor's eyes shot up in surprise, and he felt a smile twitch at his lips before he was able to mask it. The sense of grief that flooded from the tent had Aristor grasping Glorfindel tighter, while casting a look over his shoulder to see the original company behind them, with solemn looks, the Dwaro. Elves and men around them paused in action with sad eyes. I know what you are going to say, Orenya. Please do not, Glorfindel replied sharply, almost tired before steeling himself for whatever lay beyond the tent flap. He could see the sadness, the grief, and suffering of those around him, and he hoped beyond hope that she was just badly wounded. His hands shook as he opened the tent flap, his eyes going to his sister that was situated in the middle of the king's tent, atop a pile of furs. He did not recall moving from the opening to her side, or when his eyes moved from her pale face to the gaping wound in her chest. But he does recall the cry that left his lips, a scream he had not released since Ecthelion had perished, and his kin along with it. The others watched, even Fíli, as the mighty Balrog Slayer collapsed and seemed to lose the shine about him. They watched him break, his face masked into disbelief, until the agony flickered across his face like a flash fire. They watched with various degrees of emotion as he cried, tears spilling down his pale cheeks as he grasped the tunic of their fallen kin, before becoming alert as he grew silent. And Orenya? Aristor asked warily, taking a step back from his heart-chosen. Stand back, now. The second the company bar Fíli moved back, Glorfindel shot to his feet and screamed. The power that rippled out of him was a true testament of his age, as it seemed to wind everyone within the vicinity at the extent of the pain and rage in that one scream. Glorfindel snapped his jaw shut with a click as he gasped, his lungs burning with the need for air. "Has my sister not suffered enough?" he whispered, drawing all eyes towards the elf, jerking out of the way as he stormed outside to view the mountain and trees together. "Has she not suffered enough for you?" he roared, stilling the camps once more. Many looked to one another for any hint and worry that the elf was yelling at him, that Glorfindel was furious at them. 4 ages she has suffered through grief for you. 4! She has stood upon the battlefield of Melkor. She has suffered the breaking of her kin's life for the battle you waged. And then every death after that, she has been beaten and broken. She tore the hearts of her brother and sister from their breast. And now, when she finds an ounce of joy, "You take it from her!" he screamed to the sky once more. "Glorfindel! Anarinya!" Aristor warned as he watched his enraged heart-chosen scream to the Valar. "No, Aristor, I will not be silent no more. Alia, Ali, and Yavanna have caused her enough grief. Look at her mate. He is a shadow of himself, and you must agree," he gritted out before screaming. "I curse you. Bring her back. You gave me this thrice cursed second life, and I did not deserve it. Glorfindel, enough." The words echoed across the plain, and all eyes snapped to the weary voice of the flaxen-haired prince. "She would not want you to do this, to tear yourself apart. Here is where I feel her," Fíli explained, his hand over her heart. "And here is where I can see her grief and love for you. No, let it be my brother." No one but Thorin, Kíli, Glorfindel, and Aristor understood the prince's words. His words they have heard on some occasions, and explained that they were the dragon shifter's chosen tongue. But they could see that whatever was spoken between the elf and prince had an effect, and again the elf fell to his knees. "She gave you her heart then," Glorfindel replied. "A dragon gives only once their heart and freely, be it half to share a lifetime or a whole to bring back the dead. Once given, it cannot be returned," Glorfindel explained with a rasp, his legs shaking and own heart breaking. "We should have come, Aristor. We should have, and then this may not have happened," Glorfindel whispered as Aristor led him back into the tent with the others. "This is not your fault, Glorfindel. This is no one's but the orcs' fault," Aristor comforted, his brows furrowed. "This is not your fault." Fíli turned away from the scene and burrowed his head into his wife's hip, her cold hand upon his cheek. He was thankful that before Gandalf left, that he had placed a spell over her to keep her well enough to see to the burial, that he didn't have to watch her decay. His heart was heavy, though, his body empty of warmth, and Fíli just felt numb. He knew that this was what it was like to fade, but he could not let go. He could still feel his one, and it was because of her that he stayed with the living. His hand that was not grasping her arm rested upon her stomach, dreams no longer able to be reached. With the loss of Kisenth came the loss of his future, of their future. Days or months seemed to pass before Fíli's eyes, but he could not recall the time between Glorfindel arriving to now. He knew he ate. He could recall Kíli pleading with him, but he couldn't recall much else. His body screamed at him to let go, and to just let go and release the grief, but he could not. Fíli. The soft voice had his head jerking up, and there before him at the door of his tent was his Ahmad. "Ahmad?" he asked in disbelief, standing slowly and reluctantly letting go of his wife. Dee stared at her son with sadness. She had arrived with the help of Bjorn sooner than possible, leaving the care of her people in the hands of good Luco, In's wife. She had come the second, Her son's name fell from the shifter's lips and explained that he needed her, that his one had perished. I don't know what to do, Namad. He has yet to let it all go. Thorin's words echoed in her head, and now she understood. Her Mizim was a shell of what he used to be, and she can recall the memories in vivid color of her own loss. Come, Mizim, let it go. She crooned as he fell into her arms and shook. Let it all go, Kisenth. At the sound of his inner name falling from his Amad's lips, had whatever wall was holding his grief at bay crumbling down. He screamed and cried till his throat turned hoarse. He let all ounce of grief he had go, and the relief lasted for only a second until the numbness returned. He felt hollow once more. Even here, in the arms of his Amad, he could not feel. Fíli was cold and alone. The deep, gaping chasm where he knew his heart should be was ever present. Dís held her son until he stopped crying, her eyes glued to the woman's face before her. She knew nothing about the woman who had claimed her eldest son's one. She had only been told that it was because of Isabella that the war was won, risking her life for those she loved. Dís couldn't help but admire and hate her for it. I love her so much, Fíli whispered into his mother's dress. We had plans to be wed the Dwarven way when this was all over. The Dwarven way? Dís asked softly, her eyes narrowing on the woman, but she could not see from this side if there was a marriage braid or not. Fíli nodded. I asked her to marry me in Lake Town. We were wed that night by Lord Orome in her tradition. She wanted to have a proper Dwarven wedding under the mountain for you to be there. Dís felt her eyes close and tightened her hold onto her son. The feeling of rage and crushing disappointment had faded slightly at that, but not all. No, now she will never see her little son wed, never to grow old, and hopefully have a child of his own. I miss her, Amad. Fíli choked out once more. I miss her so much, it hurts. Why did she go where I cannot follow? I know, Kisenth, but I am here now. Let it all out. She crooned softly, her eyes snapping to her youngest as he stepped into the tent, and her heart clenched even more as she saw that the spark of innocence was no longer there. Her boys had grown. She pulled Kíli into her arms as well, he too letting out a choked sob. Mahal,